3, 2, 1. Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon. Whatever it is for you, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports episode, great question, 358, I believe. I want to be very, very clear up front. This will probably be the most scattered episode you've ever listened to of Strong Opinion Sports for a detailed reason. But I want to say, first of all, it's an episode all about the NHL playoffs, round one. I recorded it on Tuesday, had two awesome guests, my buddy Austin Cram, had Nathan Shield on. We talked for, I think, 2 hours about hockey between the two conversations. Lovely time, lovely people. I recorded it on Tuesday. I'm recording this at 11:29 a.m. Pacific Coast time zone, Pacific Coast time, West Coast time, on Thursday. And I was going to put this out Tuesday night or Wednesday, and we had technical difficulties. We had, I'll be honest, I'm in the middle of moving. I'm just slammed. And then also I've had really, really big problems in my personal life with some extended family that is just really toxic and causing problem after problem after problem after problem for both me and my fiance. And it's been a miserable week. And there's a moment in the middle of the show where I go to dinner, I come back, and I think I cussed like 4 times on the show because I just was loose and tired and happy to be talking to a friend and not dealing with this extended family drama anymore. So let me just tell you, there's a weird cut midway through my Austin conversation. Then we get back into the conversation. I can't say enough about the people I'm recording with. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation about the NHL playoffs round one with my good friend, Austin Cram. Joining me now is my good friend, Austin Cram. We had some technical difficulties, but we problem solved. We figured it out. We have like 45 minutes, so I got to go to dinner, so we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely.
And how are you today, Austin?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. You climbed a mountain. That was
I did.
Cooler than anything I've done maybe ever. That was awesome to follow. That was,
dude.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I have a sunglass line and a headband tan line. Like you can't probably see on camera, but I'm like, red up right above my eyebrows, and under my eyes, and that's it. And I look like a raccoon, but like red. It's like I'm doing the best I can. I'm like sweating. It's hot. It's 93. Oh my god.
It's sweltering in here. It's hot in the Northwest.
Yes, it is. Where I'm moving, it's actually 10 degrees cooler with a breeze, and I'm like, oh, let's go. I can't wait.
Time is soon.
Yes. Let's talk about hockey. What I would like to do is go through every single playoff series. I want to hear your thoughts, your kind of reaction, what you thought about each game. We'll start here. The Winnipeg Jets beat the Edmonton Oilers in 4 games, 4-0, a clean sweep. Me personally, I mean, the little I know, I was like, that's shocking. Is that how you felt?
It was shocking. When we spoke last on the show, I made note of Connor Hellebuck's performances, and I wasn't sure if he'd be able to maintain them all the way to a series win. It was 2-0 Winnipeg at the time. Whether or not Winnipeg won that series was up in the air for me. I did not think they would win the next 2 and complete the sweep at all. It was shocking is a good word.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun because in theory, it's a matchup between this great scorer, Connor McDavid, and this great goalie, Connor Hellebuck. I'm like, this is going to be legendary.
Yeah, man.
And Hellebuck kind of dominated, right?
He did, especially for the first 2 games. Going into Game 3, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, they got theirs. They got on the board. They each had, a good game, and it wasn't enough. And funny enough, the third Connor, Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets, ended up having a big conclusion to the series as well. So it was kind of a battle of the Connors, and the Winnipeg Connors got the win over the single Edmonton Connor. I don't think I want to hear that name for a while ever again. There's been too much Connor in this postseason. Never again.
No more Connors.
Yeah, no.
Well, there was another game where in Game 2 into overtime, nobody scored the entire first 3 periods. Then in overtime, finally the Jets won. But it's crazy. Like Connor Hellebuck had 38 saves, no goals given up. But Connor McDavid had opportunities. It's not like Connor McDavid did nothing. Like he had opportunities and couldn't score. And that to me is like, man, you have the best scorer in hockey statistically, and you shut him down. That blows my mind.
The way that guy plays, every single time the puck's on his stick, it's a scoring chance. His speed with the puck is unprecedented. His vision is crazy. He sees things so far ahead of everybody else. And when you combine that with this freak athletic ability, every time the puck's on his stick, like I said, it's a show, and there's always a chance there.
How about New York? The New York Islanders beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6 games, 4-2. I know a lot of my friends in New York are very excited. They're all Islanders fans. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I guess in New York, they passionately love hockey. Like, everyone I know is either a Jets fan or an Islanders fan. And I guess the Giants don't exist because I know the wrong people. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this series. I was upset. I thought maybe there was a slight chance Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby do something cool. They lost. What are your thoughts on this series?
I picked that series to go 7. I picked Islanders in 7. I think I was kind of in the minority in that, so I'm gonna take my win there. The DNA of how that series went 2 years ago, it seemed like it played out in kind of a similar way, where it seemed like no matter what would happen, the Islanders buckled down at the right times. They scored when they needed to. They pulled it out. Pittsburgh has some decisions to make, I think, headed into this offseason. They've got aging guys. No, I mean, it's not going to be something where Sidney Crosby on the trading block, although some networks might start posing that question.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy like that, but they're at this point now where a lot of their core is getting a little bit older, and they're going to have to make some choices here in the offseason. It's going to be curious to see what they do, but when a team that has a pedigree like that, you lose in the first round in 6, it leaves a really sour taste in your mouth, no matter the context, but especially how it went 2 years ago with the Islanders, and they haven't been able to quite get right since. Even this year, they started out not great, and the sprint to the finish, they did really well near the end of the season, and it looked like they were catching fire at the right time, and then it peters out as soon as it starts, and it's here you are. So it's weird times coming for the Penguins, I think.
What happened 2 years ago for Pittsburgh? They lost to the Islanders in the playoffs?
Swept.
Wow. Ooh,
Swept.
Okay.
By the Island, and I believe I'm 95% sure it was a 1 seed. Pittsburgh was. They were a 1 seed.
I want your opinion on this cup, by the way. Is this cup too big? It's like the
no,
size
it's
of my head.
It's
like a big gulp.
The cup that's too big is the cup that you can't finish.
I like that.
Confucius.
Sorry to get distracted. I just was drinking and I realized how big this cup was.
No, scholars have debated for years. I think that's a perfect size cup.
Who's the other? So Sidney Crosby. There's another. He's got like a partner in Pittsburgh. What's the other guy?
Evgeny Malkin.
Got it. And so Pittsburgh's interesting as a city because they have Big Ben, their quarterback, who is all but retired, and they're going to stick with him for some reason. I don't know why. and Sidney Crosby's another guy. He's getting older, but Pittsburgh seems unwilling to maybe refresh and restart. And I get it. There's history. They love him. He's a star. He's a Pittsburgh
it's not
guy.
going to happen. He's had too much success there. He's the money they're paying him now, and the money they'll continue to pay him as a thank you. He's still an exceptional player. Like it's not even like it's almost like we're doing this like a eulogy for him, and it's far from that because he's still a tremendous player. But and through no fault of his own, his best days are probably behind him. That's the way that these things go, especially when you got the mileage that he does on him. So again, you're in a weird spot because it's everything that you do for him, every dollar you pay him, everything that you the way you build your team around him. You have to have that thought in the back of your head that, like, hey, this, God forbid he takes a bump that he shouldn't. His career's over with his concussion history at this point. And even if he stays clean the rest of the way out, he doesn't have a ton of time left compared to, other teams in the league, his contemporaries. So, again, it's, what are you going to do for Pittsburgh? They got some thinking to do there.
As a sports city, based on the Penguins and the Steelers, they're sentimental. And they... Yeah. I think often make moves that maybe are not the most logical for building the future because they're kind of stuck in the past, which I get it. And I feel like they probably do owe Sidney Crosby. Like they feel that way and they
do.
Is it right to keep him? Is it right to keep trying this or should they restart? This is a big question. I know that. And it's kind of impossible to answer, but also, is it right to keep Crosby? And is it right to keep doing what they're doing and keep hitting a wall and not going any farther?
I think so. I mean, framed that way, the answer is probably no. But when you look at the context of things, again, the kind of secondary question that you're asking there is, do they start looking at moving Sid? And I think that answer is a vehement no. In terms of going other directions, maybe moving out some secondary pieces, or just trying to, again, make some splashes where they can. I'm not incredibly familiar with how their money is right now. I'd have to take a deeper look into that. But so, in terms of what choices they have to make coming up. But as far as Sid's future in the black and gold, that's as secure as anything as far as I'm concerned.
And you think it should be?
I think it should be. He's done so much for that team and for that city.
Yeah. Okay. The Colorado Avalanche beat the St. Louis Blues in 4 games, 4-0. It was a clean sweep. Yep. They dominated. I think they scored, I believe it was 20-7 in 4 games, which is that is what it was. And that's ridiculous. I mean, it was... Game 1, 4-1. Game 2, 6-3. Game 3, 5-1. Game 4, 5-2. The Avalanche look like they might just blow through everybody. What do you think of this series?
I think it's a sign of things to come for Vegas, to a lesser extent. Of course, teams get better as you move further into the playoffs.
Vegas, who they're playing in round 2.
Vegas, who they're playing in round 2. It's a sign of things to come for Vegas. I think it's a sign of things to come for the winner of the Canadiens and Jets series, and I think they just keep rolling. Again, I've been very staunch in my opinion that Colorado is the best team in hockey right now, and they punctuate that after a dominant 4-0 sweep of the Blues. They ransacked the Golden Knights at 7-1 in Game 1. And it didn't look particularly difficult while they were doing it. I don't know what you do. And there's some controversy in that series, and we can get to that series, the active series, in a bit if you'd like. But there's some weird stuff going on with some goalie controversy, so to say, going on in Vegas after Game 1 of that series. It's probably nothing. There's a lot of it's kind of like quarterback controversy in the football in the summer for football. There's always stories made out of nothing. But and goalies, same deal in the NHL. When there's some smoke, people jump on it. So we can go over that. But as far as
let's do it. We might as well.
Yeah.
Let's jump in.
Okay.
Because we'll talk. My goal, real quick, if I may, is to talk about round 1 and kind of talk a little bit about what's coming. And so we can talk about what's happening. I mean, this will come out tomorrow, which is Wednesday.
Tomorrow's
Wednesday. We're still. I mean, I don't mind talking about what's actually happening right now in hockey too. We don't need to be all stuck in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The crux of kind of what I'm alluding to is after Marc-Andre Fleury, the starting goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights and Vezina Trophy, that's the goalie of the year nominee. He plays 7 games in 14 days, which is kind of a heavy load for a goalie.
Yeah.
It's an emotional 7 games. There's a lot of back and forth with Vegas and Minnesota. Just kind of a lot going on there, and they choose to sit Fleury, who's been a rock for them, in Game 1 of the second round against Colorado, where they sit him for Robin Lehner, who was a great goalie in his own right. They probably have the best goalie tandem in the league, I would say, because Robin Lehner is a starting quality goalie. He would start on a large bulk of teams in the league. They play him Game 1. Head coach Peter DeBoer says, it's a mental and physical break for Fleury, who's on the wrong side of 30 and again had a pretty strong workload.
Yeah.
And then Lehner shows up and gets shelled. And Vegas fans are now saying, hey, coach, what are we doing here? I think it's a play in the result thing. I really do. I think that people do this thing where it's and I'm sure you see it, where coach, general manager, player, etc. makes a decision, and we're going to not judge the decision itself. We're going to judge the result that came about. And then we're going to either lambast them or critique them or shower them with praises for how the result went, not for the decision itself. I think it was a fine decision. I think it's justifiable. Again, your goalie who's on the wrong side of 30 is playing a lot of games, and if you're Vegas, you expect to make a deep run. He can't play every game. You're going to have to put Robin Lehner in there at some point, and they did, and I think it was a fine time to do it at the start of a series to see, keep him fresh and keep him going. It didn't go the right way, and I don't think that's anybody's fault necessarily. Colorado's a great team, but I don't think we should be slamming DeBoer when if that's a 7-1 game for Vegas, we're clapping his praises for giving Fleury a night off in a game that they dominated.
So at the time, you're saying, and I really agree with this, I like it actually,
yeah.
Let's not judge him on what happened, let's judge him on what everyone kind of thought going in, which was, hey, he's a backup goalie, probably starting quality, he needs a break, it's the logical thing to do. Even if the result sucked, which it did, it's still, the thought process makes complete sense.
I think that, I think in order, and whether it's in anything, I play a lot of fantasy football. I know your opinions on that. I think that things should be process oriented. I think that things should, we shouldn't, look at one single result and make determinations, sweeping generalizations based on that. It's the same deal here. I think it was a fine time to play your very capable backup goalie. It didn't go well. What are you going to do? I'm sure that, if you gave Fleury some truth serum, he's going to be more than happy to have a day off against, an awesome Colorado team. So I think
the
it's
reality
controversy for not.
Yeah, so it's controversy. I agree. It's a controversy people are kind of manufacturing.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's also okay. Let's play your starting goalie. The Colorado Avalanche are amazing. They might put up 7 on the starter too.
So it's You win the you lose the game 7-1, or you lose the game 4-1 or 4-2. It's still
Yeah.
1-0 in the series. Like, and then Fleury, that's 60 minutes that Fleury could have had off. If you want, again, you need to win 16 games to hoist the trophy. You're not going to sweep every team. You're going to play a long
Yeah.
postseason. If you just expect Fleury to play every game, you're going to be in for it. And he's not going to do very well come the third and fourth round. And they're going to be kicking yourself, saying, "Hey, why didn't they play this awesome backup goalie?" There's If you're going to play the result, you're always going to find something wrong. Is
Yeah.
kind of the way to look at it, I think.
Well, game 2 would have been worse if they'd played him. Like
Yeah.
he'd be even more gassed. Does that make sense? Like
It-
I think you're right. The thought process makes total sense. I mean, you play him in game 1, he's dead in game 2, and you probably lost game 1 because he's tired. Then game 2, you lose again. I guess you kind of had to accept you might lose one anyway. You got to rest your starting goalie.
There's a great chance that the snowball rolls down the hill if you force Fleury into starts over and over and over again against a team that gets a lot of great shots, against a team that plays super high octane.
Yeah.
People don't. It's hard for people that don't necessarily watch the game a lot to think about it. But if you're watching when the puck is in the zone, in the offensive zone for a team, so the goalie's kind of on alert. The puck's getting wrapped on the board. It's getting cycled. It's moving, laterally. It's moving in deep and back out. A goalie's staying primed. It's so hard on your legs to sit and be watching the puck behind the net, anchored to a post. You're on skates. Even the way Colorado plays, even when they're not putting the puck on the net, forcing Fleury to make a save, they play heavy, tiring minutes, and you got to give a guy some breaks, especially when he's in his late 30s. Even though he's been great this season,
Yeah.
there just comes a time.
Well, I climbed Mount St. Helens yesterday. I'll tell you, I couldn't climb a mountain again today. Like, you have to rest. It's just it's a fact.
You have to
when
rest.
your legs are gone, you got to take a break.
Mm-hmm. And then they hypothetically they play Fleury and he gets shelled, and then it's Fleury sucks, which is silly, or it's why didn't coach do this, which is what he did.
Yeah.
I could go on for hours about this. It's silly the way that the fans look at stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it was
Did
a
you
fine
enjoy
choice.
watching? Did you enjoy watching the Colorado Avalanche? I mean, it sounds like they just play amazing hockey and are so well.
I'd enjoy watching them play a
disciplined
middle
and-
school team. Like it's like they could beat a middle school team by 80, and I would enjoy it. Yeah, there was I think it was the seventh and final goal the Avalanche scored. It was Nathan McKinnon, who's their best player, and the puck's kind of jostling around on the far side. So if you're watching on TV, it's the far side of the ice near the benches. And it's a normal play, the puck kind of squirts loose to an Avalanche player, and McKinnon's at the red line, center ice, which the ice is 200 feet, so he's 100 feet away from the goal, and the puck gets passed along to him at center ice is where he receives it. He takes like 6 pushes, which sounds like kind of a lot, but it's like 6 steps basically on the ice, and by like the 4th one, he's at full clip, which he's about the only one who rivals McDavid in terms of speed with the puck.
Yeah.
He's already fast. He's faster than everyone on the ice. The defense had their back skating, they're flat-footed. They got no idea, and he comes in, fakes the puck backhand, flips it forehand over the glove side of Leonard, and it was just like it looked like I saw someone describe it was a comment. I don't know if it was on Instagram or Facebook or Reddit or wherever, but someone had basically said that it looked like when the guy who's playing beer league but like 2 levels too low decided he wanted to score. And that's exactly what it was. I mean, he just felt like he was going to score that possession and make it 7-1. He capped it off. But that's how they play. They make everything look so easy. In a 1-1 game in the third period, they make stuff look easy. It's just incredible.
Why don't people hate the Colorado Avalanche? I mean, when you dominate in sports, is it just because they're new? Because people hated the Patriots. They dominated for so long, they got tired of it. In Formula One, Mercedes F1 dominates and people got tired of it. Is it because they're new? Because they are incredibly dominant. Why is there I've noticed hockey fans embrace them and love watching them. And they haven't gotten to the point where they hate them yet. When is that going to happen? And do you think it will happen? What's going on in hockey, and why don't people hate them?
It's always going to happen if you're too good, right? Like, if it doesn't matter how you build your team or how the personalities on your team or what your team is made of. If you're good for too long, you will be hated. I think that Colorado fans would be more than happy to be hated if it means they're going to win a couple of championships, this decade.
Yeah.
But in terms of right now, it's a homegrown team. It's a team that doesn't have a lot of grading personalities. The style they play is really, really fun. It's a lot of the reasons that people hate teams in sports outside of them just being really good is maybe team composition. Maybe they don't like that a team bought their, the Yankees, right? They buy their team. That's the whole thing with them. The Lakers, they have a certain geographical advantage that allows them to get players in a way that other teams can't. So we hate them for that. It's not like that with Colorado. It's just they're a smart team that manages the draft, that manages their cap really
Mm.
well. They have good eyes for talent. They develop really well. They're hard to not like unless you're a rival team or if you're a Detroit fan. Shout out to the '90s.
Yeah.
Um, there's hard to dislike them.
Can Connor Hellebuck stop Colorado? What would that matchup look like, do you think?
I mean, he can.
Yeah.
He can. That's going to involve Connor Hellebuck getting past the Montreal Canadiens, and I think they will. We can talk
Yeah.
about that series. I think they will win that series. He can. He's the best goalie on earth. Like I said last time we were here, I think he can. He can do about anything. The hard part's going to be, it's with Edmonton, it was 1 and 2 guys. Colorado goes so deep. That's the hard part. It's not, it's not. I have to be really, really
Yeah.
on my game for 17 minutes or something. It's never going to stop. It's just this endless wave of skill and pace that comes at you. 5 guys. There's no breaks. There's no hiding anybody. They've got everybody on the ice. Dangerous for them. They've got all kinds of great talent. It's talent diversity. There's a lot going on there, and I trust Helly against about anybody. In one game, but winning 4 and 7, it's tough.
Yeah. Could that matchup end up being what we hoped McDavid versus Hellebuck would be? Because what I thought Connor McDavid versus Connor Hellebuck would be is one wins a game, like back and forth, right? One punch is landed, another one lands a punch, back and forth, blow to blow. Maybe Colorado against the Winnipeg Jets could make that happen. Great scoring against a great goalie, back and forth. I hope that could happen.
Yeah, Winnipeg does a good job of not allowing shots, and with when you have Hellebuck in net, there's kind of a natural marriage there. If you're not allowing shots and your goalie's really good, you're gonna, there's not gonna be a lot of teams that score against you. The hard part is that they have to do their own thing on offense to match that high octane. Because again, unless you get a really all-time performance from your defense, from your goaltending, you're gonna have to start matching eventually. It's the way of the game now. Everything's so fast and skaters are so talented. You're gonna have to match that offense at some point. And while Winnipeg doesn't allow a lot of shots, they also don't shoot a lot. They don't generate a lot of awesome chances. They kind of grind it out, and they rely on some goaltending and some great defense, and they win low scoring games. That's kind of been their MO.
Is there a stat for sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there a stat for time of possession?
There is. There is possession. It's hard because in most other sports, it's very clear who has possession, whereas in hockey, a lot of the game is spent with no team having possession. So time of possession is typically not. It's typically if a team has the puck in its attacking offensive zone. So if you are possessing the puck in the neutral zone, or if you're possessing the puck in your own defensive zone, has to be very clear, and it has to be in a situation that could feasibly generate a scoring chance. So again, that's clear and obvious possessing of the puck by a team in their own offensive zone. So while there is possession metrics, they're not necessarily what you'd think of as possession on a holistic basis.
I guess when I watched Winnipeg versus Edmonton, I just felt like the Oilers never had the puck. I was like, man, the Winnipeg Jets are dominating time of possession or whatever it is. But like, I felt like, whether true or not, that the Jets had the puck more and had more scoring opportunities than Edmonton did. I don't really care or know if the stats reflect it, but I know the feel of it was Edmonton just isn't getting opportunities. Is that maybe a potential way that Winnipeg, I mean, we're talking way in the future now, but Winnipeg could find a way to slow down Colorado? It's just, we're going to have the puck more or be fighting over in the middle, and you're not going to have as many scoring opportunities.
Yeah, so what you're talking about in terms of possession, I kind of outlined that, but there's also there's an awesome website called Natural Stat Trick. It's kind of like Hat Trick, but it's Stat Trick. If any hockey fans want to go check that out, they measure everything. They're like the best resource in my opinion for like deep diving hockey analytics, but they do a really good job at scoring chance qualities. They measure low, medium, and high danger scoring chances, and then they take metrics based on that. So they look at total counts. They look at like high danger, all these danger metrics. They look at allowed for a percentage of like a high danger shot saved by a goalie, or if a team is getting a certain percentage of high danger chances against their opponents. All kinds of crazy stuff like that. This website tracks, and I've actually got a lot of their stuff in my notes here today. So, in terms of what Colorado does with their chance generating, you're absolutely on the money in that is how they do things. They generate crazy chances. Everything they do is scary. I was just taking it. So they're I took a look really quick. High danger chances for percentage. It's a mouthful. It's basically of high danger chances in a game. How many went to you? How many went to your opponent? Colorado's third in that. They're 58% of high danger chances in a game are for Colorado. Number 2 is Edmonton, who's not playing hockey anymore. They're playing golf right now. A lot of high danger chances on the putting greens for them. And Boston, who based on a lot of these metrics are actually playing the best hockey in the postseason at this point.
Okay.
We'll see how that turns out. But
could we get Boston, Colorado in the finals?
We could.
That'd be cool.
We could.
I'm curious. First of all, I think it's totally valid to talk about Colorado a lot because they are the Kansas City Chiefs, the New York Yankees, New York, probably a bad example, but whatever team is dominating in the sport, that's this one. They're dominating. They're the highlight. They're the star team. But I do want to try to find something to say for St. Louis Blues fans who got swept, kind of embarrassed in round 1. If you're a St. Louis Blues fan, do you just go, well, we ran into this massive bullet train, just ran us over. It wasn't really about us. It was about them being so good. Like, do you take any comfort in that?
That's the solace that you would take if you're a Blues fan. And also, they dealt with, both in the postseason and in the regular season, they had some injury luck, or bad luck, I should say, that is pretty unprecedented. I don't think they were a team even completely healthy that's going to make a crazy deep postseason run, but they definitely look a lot better than they did against Colorado, and they look a lot better than they did during the regular season if that full team is there. So if you're St. Louis, you're stoked that 2 years ago you hoisted the Stanley Cup for the first time in like 1,000 years, and what are you going to do this year? It's a weird year already with the division alignments with COVID stuff. You clearly just had a bad bit of injury luck. What do? You retool. You come back next year and hope that the hockey gods are on your side, so to say, next season. So it sucks for them. They're going to go cry into their Stanley Cup that's still fresh. It's kind of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's crocodile tears, right? Like,
exactly.
Oh, poor you.
Well, and then it's like so now, because we have to talk about it. And we can continue on. We can make this a nice separating point. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, no Stanley Cups since 1967.
Nope.
No first round wins since 2004.
Wow, I didn't know that.
This is hockey town. You are the team. You have the nice arena, and your upper bowl seats cost $400, and you sell every game, and you are the squad. And I sat here watching the conclusion of Game 7 of that Montreal-Toronto series, and I just can't help but think, like, this team, it doesn't matter who you are, if how you get to Toronto, you put on the blue and white sweater, and this is going to sound rude, you take on loser DNA. You just, they've lost 8 straight closeout games. This team, as soon as the lights get to their brightest, they forget how to play, and it's baffling. It boggles the mind. This is a team that, after Game 4, when they win handily, you think, man, they're up 3-1 in the series, and if that first game, when Tavares gets hurt, doesn't sap the energy of our team, we're probably looking at a sweep here. And again, this is a 7-game series loss, and Tavares doesn't play, so you can take that how you will. If Tavares is there, they probably win. They probably win in fewer than 7, frankly. But still, you're a team that up and down on paper is so much better. You choke away a 3-1 series lead, and it's just, it's the most tortured. It's got to be the most tortured fan base in sports. And at this point, Toronto fans, I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan feeling bad for Toronto fans. That's how bad it's gotten. There's no words. Again, it's loser DNA, and I'm sorry to Toronto fans. It's probably going to ruffle feathers, but what can you say at this point? There's nothing to say.
Who's you said? What's the J name?
Jonathan Tavares. Tavares. He was the one that got that knee in Game 1. Their captain, their second or third best player, who gets hurt. He plays. It's probably a Toronto win. You probably break whatever this tragic. Is it a curse if it's the first round? Like, do we get to call first-round exits a curse? The '67 Stanley Cup, that's a curse because that's been a long time you haven't won a cup. But it's 2004 first-round exits. I don't think that's a curse. Maybe if you're, maybe it's gotten so bad they're going to call it a curse. I don't know. But either way,
I'm curious. Is it the city? Is it the city that's the problem?
I legitimately, I don't. It's befuddling, right? And the problem that I think they're going through now, I joke about loser DNA, and again, it's pretty direct, but it's how you feel at this point, right? It's if you're an outsider, and I know Toronto fans feel the same way. Incidents in years past, it's every year, every team's different. This year, it's how they've allocated their resources. I've got a bunch of notes here on Toronto. I really was geared up to talk about this Toronto thing because I think it's huge. Despite the fact that we're in the second round of the playoffs, it's huge news that this team that's got all the money in the world and all the fan support in the world continues to just be awful.
Yeah. Let me clarify for anyone who missed it, by the way. The Montreal Canadiens beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games.
Yes.
And the Maple Leafs had a 3-1 lead in the series and completely blew it. So if anyone didn't know that, that's what happened.
The one seed in this division. They were the best team in the division. Correct.
And it's Toronto. It's hockey capital. I guess not USA.
It's
like
hockey capital of
USA.
North America. It's hockey capital of the world. I mean, I would say like it's the biggest. It's hockey's everything they have, and they just continue to crumble. There's not much you can say. And again, I think it's the way that they've constructed this team is not conducive to winning in the postseason. When your best players are only playing a third of the game, and you're spending. So I think that there's a fundamental flaw in how management in the NHL looks at team building. I think it's archaic. I think it's antiquated. They're looking at dollars, and you can't look at dollars because it's a hard cap league. There's no exceptions like in the NBA, and it's not like the MLB where you can just spend and spend and spend. It's like the NFL in that it's a hard cap league, but the difference is that the NFL is paying 53 guys. The NHL teams are paying 23. So you have to look at things not in dollars because of how the cap increases. You have to look at things in percentage of cap. I feel very strongly about that no matter what the dollar is, old school GMs see a guy getting paid $10 million, they think he's literally Wayne Gretzky. That's going to be the norm in 5 or 6 years when the cap continues to increase. That's the way that these things work. But there's going to be GMs who refuse to pay their good players because they don't want to pay a guy 8 figures because they think that's the craziest number they've ever seen. It needs to be percentage of cap. That's how you have to look at it. That's how I feel very strongly about that. So circling back to Toronto, I looked at the 8 remaining teams in the playoffs, and I looked at Toronto, and I looked at the top 3 forwards with one exception, which is like your offensive players typically, and what percentage those top 3 players made of the NHL salary cap this season. Toronto is at 40.2%. The next closest team is the Lightning, and that's because they cheated the cap quite literally, and I can go into that further if you'd like. They're at 30.4%. They're at 10% lower, and they cheated the cap. Toronto's paying 40% of Toronto's payroll goes to 3 guys, and that's problematic because it's a hard cap league. You don't have any more money. The Tavares signing probably felt really, really good for general manager Kyle Dubas. He's a young guy. He's a very analytically driven, mathematically driven general manager, which is kind of new for hockey. And there's no doubt that signing a guy like Tavares probably made him feel pretty good. It's a blue chip signing, but that 10 and change per year, whatever it is he's making, it's somewhere in there. That has a lot more. That's a lot more costly than just the number because it completely. It makes you devoid of real depth, and that's what you need. That's what you find you need come spring. It's a more costly signing.
It sounds like paying a quarterback too much in football. You pay your quarterback everything, and there's nothing left to spend for the rest of your team.
And that's what it is. And that's so. I mean, so like a team like Colorado, I think they're going to win the cup, right? Mm-hmm. Toronto 40.2%. Colorado's at 25.8% because Nathan McKinnon is on the best contract in hockey.
What does that stat? Break down what that stat actually means.
So there's the NHL. So there's a salary cap, just like in football.
Yep.
There's hard cap. Can't spend any more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado is spending 25.8% of their available money, the salary cap that everybody has, on their top 3 guys. And I chose top 3 kind of arbitrarily. And you could argue this guy's number 3, not number 4. I get it, right? Like yell at me in the comments, I guess. I don't know. I chose 3 guys that are, I think, the best on the team in terms of forwards, and I looked at what they're spending on those guys in terms of cap percentage. Colorado's spending about a quarter of their available cap on their top 3 guys, which is actually sounds like a lot. It's pretty normal. Toronto's over 40%, right? That's exceedingly high.
Almost half your salary cap is
almost
on
half
3
your
people.
salary cap. And then there's a team like the Hurricanes, who are at 17.3%. Very, very small. And the reason for that is because they're probably second best player, Andrei Svechnikov, he's on his rookie deal. Just like what the Eagles did, right? When they won their Super Bowl, it's what teams are trying to do now. You try to get your quarterback in on, even the Chiefs are the most recent example. That's an even better one. You're trying to build a team around your best player when your best player is still cheap on a rookie deal. Same concept. That's exactly what teams should be doing. Toronto's just opted to completely not do that and pay 3 guys probably at market value, but they are consciously deciding that they are going to be devoid of any real depth because, by the way, when you're as good as Toronto, you don't get a pick very high. So all these rookies you're going to bring in aren't going to be guys that are going to contribute the same way a top 5 pick would. So, it creates difficulties. I think that I respect Kyle Dubas. I respect the way he runs the Leafs. I like the way that he's thinking about things. But I think he's mismanaged his resources. And
what makes you say that you like how he runs things?
Hockey is a very how do I say it? It's a sport not unlike football that's a little bit resistant to new age change. Even baseball was this way. Everybody's seen Moneyball, right? That's a true story. The way that they responded to it's an awesome movie. The way that they responded to Billy's approach to baseball. They think it's new age. They think it's too.
Okay, so I told you there was a weird cut. This was the moment. If you're watching on YouTube, you can look at my face when I realized, Austin cut out. And we'd been having technical problems all day, and it was actually very fortunate because I had to go to this family dinner in 10 minutes anyway from that exact moment. So I was oblivious to the time. Don't tell my fiance. I would have been very late if he hadn't cut out. So him and I continued the conversation later on that night. It was like 5 o'clock when we recorded. So now the conversation will continue later on in the night. Enjoy the rest of my conversation with Austin. All right, we are back. We took a break by accident. It's now been 5 hours. It's 11:28 p.m.
It's been an
Dinner
entire
was terrible,
baseball
by
game.
the way. Oh, you went to the Mariners
sorry.
game, which was probably, I assume, bad, right? Because the Mariners are terrible.
They got shelled, but it was an eventful game. I think it ended 12-6 in true Mariners fashion. They managed to put up 6 runs, which might be a season high for them, and still get doubled up.
So I'm not a Mariners fan anymore, and I chose that.
I'm not
because I
really
couldn't
either.
take the
I'm just
heartache
local.
anymore. It's fun
Yeah.
though. Baseball games are fun.
Exactly.
I went to dinner. Family dinner was actually fucking. I said that's my fucking show. I can say what I want. I try not to cuss ever, but I can do it occasionally. It was terrible. Like literally, the worst family dinner I've ever had. It was with some toxic people. Had a hard conversation. Like, not fun. Like, and so now I'm very relieved at 11:28 p.m. after a hard day to sit down, talk some hockey with my good friend, continue our conversation from earlier.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. So, where we left off, we were talking about why you like the Toronto Maple Leafs general manager.
I do, yeah. So his name's Kyle Dubas. He's the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a young guy. He started in the junior hockey ranks and has built his way up into being the general manager of perhaps the most speculated upon, most covered, most intriguing, and most interesting, I'll even say.
The biggest. They're the
Toronto
Dallas
Maple Leafs.
Cowboys
and
of
the
hockey.
biggest, without a doubt, the biggest. There's a lot that goes into being the general manager of the Maple Leafs that you don't get when you're the general manager of the Florida Panthers. The reason I like him is because he brings a fresh-faced, new approach to managing a hockey team. Hockey for decades had this very grit and grind approach. It was the old school way. It was being very physical. It was lots of hitting. And there's still a place for that in the game today, but the game has gotten so much faster and more skilled like a lot of sports do. And with that, your analysis and your team building strategies need to follow suit, right? So Kyle Dubas has taken this very Moneyball type approach. It's very analytical, it's very mathematical, it's very statistically based. And that's kind of been what he's hung his hat on. And I like that he is pioneering this approach to team building. That said, like I said before our break, I think that I don't exactly know what it is. I never talked to the guy, I couldn't say. But I think that he had the prospect in signing a big blue chip free agent in John Tavares, and he paid him too much money. And I think that a guy that has otherwise been, like I said, a fresh face and a nice new look into managing a hockey team, has made a mistake. That's very soon, very, very soon in the coming weeks or months, he's going to have to get himself out of a jam. And it's going to be interesting to see how he manages that, because there's going to be some tough decisions. And you can almost guarantee now that this Leafs core, in some way, is not going to come back in its entirety.
Will this be a step backward for the way hockey teams are built? Like, it sounds like he was a step forward in some kind of progress, and this might be a giant step back that he failed, basically, this year.
The difference is, or the hard part is that it's the one mistake, and I mean, every GM makes mistakes, right? Nobody's perfect, nobody bats 1,000 in this. It's just that this signing that's looks like it might become a pretty glaring mistake is going to be far more costly than a GM that signs a guy or two on short term for not a lot of money. Maybe you pay him $1 million, $1.2 million more than you should. He's out in 2 years, and it's a bad signing, and it might keep you back. But ultimately, it's not going to be your complete undoing. And that's not to say that this Tavares signing necessarily did do that, because he's an amazing player, and it's not even necessarily his fault. It's just the fact that there's so much money tied up in so few guys. It's hard to sustain that when come hockey in spring, you need 23 guys that are going to contribute and work hard and play really well. And when you're spending as much money as there are on those guys, it's hard to find that.
So is the problem that he spent a ton of money on Tavares and then Tavares got hurt?
It's not even that he got hurt. It's just that they have these two guys in Marner and Matthews who are budding superstars and who are already getting paid 8 figures. And it's hard to tell a GM with money to spend to not go out and get the best available guy in the market, which Tavares was that year. And obviously him getting hurt in a series that you lose in 7 doesn't do you any favors. But that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's necessarily just that one signing in a vacuum. It's what it creates. It's now there's like a sunk cost type thing here, in that not only now are you out the money for Tavares, which you're not out the money because he's been a great player, so you're spending it, the way you'd want to, but there's an opportunity cost in not being able to get some depth pieces that can contribute, when your stars aren't playing their best. I mean, Corey Perry, was a good player in his, 8-10 years ago, however long it was. He's a good player. He's still hanging around, but nowhere near what he was when he was an Anaheim Duck. He outscored Marner and Matthews this series, and not to say that he's not a better player clearly, but it's just one of those things where you're spending $22 million or whatever it is on those two guys combined, and they get outscored by a guy who's going to be out of the league in the next 3 or 4 years, if not sooner. You can't have that, and he bought it. The Toronto Maple Leafs management bought themselves out of building a playoff team in favor of building a regular season team, is the way that I kind of approached it.
Didn't they make some big trade at the trade deadline? And it was basically a rental that's now gone, and they traded like a big mortgage to get him. Like, weren't they all in on some move? Am I wrong about that?
That was the Bruins had the Taylor Hall trade. We talked about that last episode. Okay. In terms of a trade for the Maple Leafs, I'm having a hard time. I don't believe so. Or they actually lied. They acquired Nick Foligno. Who's the former captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Good player. And clearly it's not enough, but he's a good player. He's leadership, and I guess that's a good segue into my next point, is that you expect this team, who's very top heavy, but also has a ton of former leadership in kind of its bottom lines. You got Joe Thornton, who was the captain of the Sharks forever, the Bruins before that. He was a great player there. You've got Wayne Simmons, who wore a letter in Philadelphia during his time there. You've got Nick Foligno, who wore a letter in Columbus. There's a lot of leadership on this team, a lot of guys who have been there before and done that and played a lot of NHL games. Where are these guys when you're gripping, when you're up 3-1? Where are these guys to come and say, hey, let's put this away, or in Game 7, we need to work harder, we need to play better? The expectations are lower for guys who are making fractions of dollars like your top end guys are, but you still ask the question. It's like, it seems like it's just endemic all the way down the roster. It's the goal scorers aren't goal scoring, the leaders aren't leading. You don't get what's going on here. It's craziness.
Here's another mark against the Maple Leafs GM. They traded for Nick Foligno. They gave up a 1st round pick and a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
And he's a free agent. And the speculation is going to go back to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's going to go back from where he came from. So they traded him away to make a run and didn't finish their run. So that trade almost looks useless now, which is brutal. That's rough stuff, man.
These are the kind of trades that can sink you. It's true, and I mean, and they also acquired Riley Nash at the deadline as well, from Columbus as well for a 7th-round pick. And Riley Nash is a good player, and a 7th-round pick. The statistics are not great.
Yeah.
For a 7th-round pick is going to make the NHL. It doesn't happen very often, but it's throwing resources away for what, at best case scenario, are rentals or are band-aids, and you're not even getting what you expect out of it. It's become a nightmare in Toronto, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal if they didn't have this cloud of repeated postseason failures looming over their heads. But when you finally believe, as a Maple Leafs fan, that this might be your year, you win the division, you're looking locked and loaded, you do really well in the regular season, you make these trades to further set you up for success later on, and it all comes crumbling down in losing 3 straight to frankly a worse team. It's not good times in Toronto right now. I'm not jealous of Toronto management.
Well, the story is Toronto lost, right? No one's talking about the fact it sounds like that the Montreal Canadiens won.
Absolutely.
So is there anything you can say on their perspective? Like, what do they do? What can you say to their fan base right now that is like, hey, good job, or any analysis there for Montreal?
Yeah, I mean, Carey Price is the first. I believe the stat that I saw was that he is the first player making $10 million a year to win a Game 7. Yeah, there's only 13 guys in the league who are making that much money. He's one of them. An amazing goaltender, first ballot Hall of Famer as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And he played great. He played great when he had to in Game 7, although the Leafs didn't do a tremendous job of generating shots and making it hard on him. He played well when he had to. A guy like that, he's notoriously great in closeout games. I think his record in Game 7s is something like 6-2, which is pretty tremendous.
Wow. Yeah.
So he's got that clutch gene going on. He's a guy that can win you any one game. There's a lot of guys like that who aren't what they were, and he's not. But put him in a one-game situation, who knows what happens. The bad news for the Canadiens is that this is not one-game series hockey. This is you got to win 4 and 7. And as good as Price has been, and as good as some of those guys on the Canadiens have been, Tyler Toffoli being one of them, Nick Suzuki, another great player. They've had some guys. I just don't think that
you don't think they can beat Winnipeg?
Enough. I think they can beat Winnipeg. I don't think they will. But it's certainly not off the table to me. I think that's where it stops. I think that whether it's Colorado or Vegas, I think that both of those teams just overwhelm them with talent and with experience and with all the things it takes to be a successful team in the spring.
Yeah.
I think it's Colorado, but even if Vegas manages to pull the upset, I don't think it changes the result for Montreal. I think that the second round success is as far as they get.
Let's shift to Boston. And by the way, not that anyone cares, but I think it's funny. So I've got 2 cups now. The big cup blocks out the small cup completely. And the small cup's LaCroix. I'm a LaCroix guy now, apparently, because I can't drink beer. It makes me I'm just not a big beer guy.
Yeah.
Soda's too sugary. Freaking LaCroix is like all the fun of like a fruity drink or something like that, but none of the consequences. So,
what's your flavor?
This is my first time ever getting LaCroix. I got it literally 10 minutes ago at Safeway on my
Oh,
way home.
so you're new to it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I got peach and blackberry, and the blackberry's good. It's almost gone. I drank it really fast.
Blackberry,
so
I think blackberry is, when it comes to the flavored water segment, I think the blackberry is the most consistent hit for me. It seems like there's not a lot of bad blackberry flavored beverages happening. It's gone.
It's good, man. It's gone, dude. I loved it. So update on the cups. That's what's happening. So now, I love this stupid show. It's so much fun. The Boston Bruins beat the Washington Capitals in 5 games, 4-1.
Yeah.
But it was closer than a 4-1 victory, right? I mean, it was back and forth, some overtime games.
A lot of overtime.
What'd you make of that series?
Boston's a better team, and I just as I took my victory lap for picking the Islanders earlier, I'll take my lickings here for picking the Capitals, not only to win round 1 but to also win round 2. A miss for me there. What can I say? It always happens. Boston was whiffed bad strikes 1, 2, and 3.
We've all done it. I've made videos about my being wrong, so I've been there.
yeah. No, what are you gonna do? You pick enough teams, you pick enough games, you're gonna be wrong. No, Boston's the better team, and Caps fans are gonna walk away from this series saying, hey, and I said it on our last show, and it was when it was early in the series, I said, a couple bounces go this way, go that way. We're looking at a different series, and Capitals fans can walk away from this believing that because it is in some ways true, but you look at the way Boston has played since, the underlying stuff with them, expected goals and expected goals against, the results are worse than the play on ice should dictate it being, if that makes sense. I think they're only going up. I think the Islanders are going to give them a chance, give them a series. I don't think it's going to be just a stomping necessarily, but Boston just looks better. They look like they're catching fire at the right time. I think the Caps were a little bit lucky to get to where they were, and where they got was a 4-1 series loss.
Well, I think, man, and this sounds so silly, but it is comforting if you're like actually a player on a team, is, hey, you might have lost, but you gave them everything you had, and you made it really difficult on them. Like, there's some nobility in that. You lost, but, hey, you made it tough.
Yeah, you're going to look at the Wikipedia page of the 2021 Stanley Cup Championships, in 10 years, and you're going to see Boston beat Washington 4-1, and you're going to think, man, that was crazy. But nobody in the Boston locker room is saying, that was an easy series. No one's feeling good about how that went. Everybody's thinking, wow.
Sigh of relief.
Sigh of relief. Washington gave us a fight, and if you look in your crystal ball, there's a few different scenarios where that goes horribly wrong. And and if it on the furthest spectrum, it goes completely opposite, and you're thinking, man, if only we could have had those bounces. Yeah, good teams find a way to make their own luck, and great teams capitalize on that luck. Boston did that, and Washington didn't, and I think Boston will continue to do that.
What's fun about moving forward is you got the New York Islanders and the Boston Bruins. Boston against New York in the hockey play. Like, dude, I bet that atmosphere of those stadiums is going to be phenomenal. Like, that sounds like a lot of fun to watch and be involved in.
Yeah. So, New York, the Islanders have played in Nassau Coliseum for 100 years, for a long time. And it's a rinky-dink, old, pretty decrepit, but incredibly soulful and personable.
Got
and
character.
It's got people say that about arenas that suck, and this isn't one of those times. Like, it actually has character. They've had great success in that arena dating back, again, decades. They briefly left to an arena in Brooklyn because they were tearing the Coliseum's done. I believe after this year, the Coliseum's done. And they moved to Brooklyn briefly to kind of try out this new setting, and it sucked. You couldn't see the ice, like a third of the ice, from a bunch of the seats because of the scoreboard. It was a terrible setting. It was awful.
Is it the basketball, the Barclays Center?
I think it was Barclays, yeah.
Where the Nets play, I think, in Brooklyn.
Where the Nets play, yeah, exactly. And it just isn't set up right. The sight lines are not set up for hockey very well, and it was a terrible experience. So they've since moved back to Nassau briefly to conclude its time before they, finish up a stadium that I believe is being built for hockey, to move on. So it's, pour one out for the great Nassau Coliseum.
But what if they could end on a high note, like a good series?
Exactly, right? And that's where I was going with it. It's like, you've got this historic arena, and now it's like this one last ride, and it's Boston. Like, it could be anybody, right? But you want it to be Boston. It's the Bruins. They're right across the yard. The fans, indignant in their own separate ways, full of energy. It's going to be raucous, and I would like to be a fly on the wall of any family that happens to be split down the line, like Bruins-Islanders. I'm not sure how common that would be, but some fun arguments over the dinner table for the next couple of weeks.
Dude, there was a moment when I watched a game in Boston, and I went, I have to go watch a professional hockey game, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals. I believe it was 2 years ago. I think if my memory's correct, 2 years ago, Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues. Is that accurate?
Absolutely right. Well done. Yep.
Game 7 in Boston, and I think Boston lost, actually. But I remember that the pregame, the vibe, the energy, the passion. I was like, dude, that looks like so much fun to go to. A game in Boston with that fan base, like, oh my gosh. I hope someday, in fact, if I ever get what I would like to do, because I just love to do shit like this, if we could get press passes or even tickets, like somehow, because maybe media could help us out, I'd take you as my cameraman and we just go watch a dope-ass hockey game. It'd be so fun. I'm cussing a lot tonight. I think I had a really rough dinner and I just like,
you give me a one and where.
It. But dude, it'd be so fun to go to that with you. Like, that sounds like so cool.
It's a historic team. They're an original six team. There's so many guys over the years from literally decades and decades and decades. Bobby Orr all the way on up, and there's so much history of Bruins hockey. There's so much to dig into, and I've never been to the Garden, old or new, but the way that people talk about it, like there's this energy in it, and it's so palpable, and that's
let's talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning. Unless do you have more about Boston or that series?
Nothing crazy. Quick notes. I mean, the Islanders are due for regression. Their expected goals for versus their actual goals for. It's about a 33% decrease they could expect to see. And obviously, this is we're playing hockey. We're not doing math, so you never know exactly how it's going to go. But based on what we're seeing from them, they're due for some sort of regression. Boston, on the other hand, is leading in high danger chances for, so they're doing a good job of generating really, really scary scoring chances for the opposite team. And they're playing well on that front. So look for more of that. Boston's got a ton of experience. Their group up and down has played in a lot of playoff games, and that matters tremendously in the Stanley Cup, more so than their postseasons in other sports. So it's another notch in their cap. And the Islanders have played 51 more minutes than any other team. They've played 96 more than Boston. 96 is a game and a half's worth more they've played when you're getting into this time of year. Every minute matters. So the Islanders very easily could see some slow legs if we get further into the series. So just again some notes there to look for in that series. I think Boston takes it probably 6 games.
Okay. I was going to ask you if you had a prediction. It sounds like Boston. It did sound. Do you think the Islanders will regress a little bit? Boston's playing really well. Boston wins in 6. I love that.
Yep.
So the Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Florida Panthers in 6 games. They won the series 4-2. Before we get into Tampa Bay, Florida, the battle for Florida, like this cool, it's kind of like getting to watch the Miami Dolphins play like the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs. Like it'd be incredible, right? But you kept saying something earlier. I've heard you say the Tampa Bay Lightning cheated the cap. What does that mean?
Yes. Okay. So this requires some setup.
Go ahead.
So there's this thing in hockey. It's called the LTIR. It's long-term injured reserve. And this is for when a guy is going to be is hurt. He's hurt and he's going to be out for quite a while, for a long time. This allows you to keep the player on the team, but it basically negates his cap, so you can spend to replace him. So the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'll say their best player. I think he's their best player, at least their best skater, no doubt. Nikita Kucherov. He's their goal-scoring Russian sniper, amazing player, super flashy, really great at hockey, really great at scoring goals from everywhere. He's just a fun guy to watch. He is on the books for, I believe, $9.5 million, which is a very highly paid player and deservedly so. He had, I believe it was a hip injury, I might be wrong, way back early in the season that he was going to have some work done on and sit out for. And the Lightning, very obviously, just through what we saw in his timeline of recovery, we're purposefully having him not play because he's on LTIR. If he comes back, he's now counting his $9.5 million against the cap. Tampa Bay is already a team that spends right up to the cap, so they've got no flexibility. Now, where this matters for the postseason is that come playoff time, there actually is no salary cap. And the reason that is possible is because the trade deadline happens, so no more trades can happen, and there comes a date where you can no longer add to your roster. So if you can't add any players and you can't trade any players, what's the point of having the salary cap, right? Well, what they're able to do is come postseason time, when they turn salary cap off in the menus, they bring Nikita Kucherov back. So now his $9.5 million that they have now replaced with other help and spent right back up to the cap again, they get him back. So they now have those players that they got, and now they also have him.
So they have a ton of depth, I would imagine, right?
They're an incredibly deep team.
I love that. I know that's it's a loophole. It reminds me of the New
Close
England
it,
Patriots.
NHL. Gary Bettman, close the loophole if you don't like it.
That's how you win. You find a way to beat your opponent by any way you can within the rulebook. I think that's awesome. I love that. I'm the kind of guy doing basketball. I'd elbow you a bunch and take cheap shots that no one saw. I love playing dirty. And that's exactly what the Tampa Bay Lightning are doing. That's awesome. Am I wrong? Is that your reaction when you hear that?
There's a lot of disagreements on this topic. I even saw somebody in your comments on the last video we did that made special note of it, and he didn't seem to be such a big fan of it. They didn't seem to be such a big fan of it. Depends on who you ask. If you're in the Tampa Bay area, I think you're probably a pretty big fan of what they've been doing. If you're not, it's a varied response. I'm kind of with you in that, if it's here, every team can do it, right? The reason that this has worked for Tampa is because they've managed to field a roster of such great players that they have to pay them to stick around. And now they have this other awesome player, Kucherov, who's back, and he scored 2 goals and got an assist in his first game back, so I think his hip's feeling okay. And here they are. They're loaded. And other teams, I refuse to believe if you pull 30 other GMs, if they were put in a situation where they have so much talent, they literally can't afford to pay them all, except for they have this loophole where they can bring in more depth and still keep their stars around for the postseason. Every single one of them does it. And the reason they don't do it now is because they don't have the talent.
Yeah, man. They're coming off a title, aren't they?
They are.
Dude, it feels very New England. Like what the Patriots used to do in football. They'd find a way
to does feel very New England.
We found this rule, and we can use it to just beat the crap out of you. I think, again, I feel... I understand anybody who doesn't like that. I get why they would feel that way.
Yeah.
But you should be mad at the NHL as a league, not at Tampa Bay. If they don't like it, change the rule.
That's kind of my default response to a lot of things that are broken within a league. I mean, it's kind of off topic, but people are complaining a lot now in basketball about foul baiting and how often fouls get called. And to me, when you're grading, if I'm a player and my paycheck and my stature within the game and how many minutes I play and all this stuff is dictated upon how many points I score. Yes, I'm foul baiting. I'm going to get to the line. I'm going to keep scoring because that's my paycheck. If I make All NBA, I get a raise, I get a bonus. These are things that matter. If you don't like it, yell at the league, yell at the officials, yell at Adam Silver, yell at whoever you want. Don't yell at the players because they're going to keep doing it, and I would too, and I don't blame them. And it's the same deal here. Yell at the league. Get mad at Gary Bettman. Don't get mad at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think sports and business are different. I think business, the ethics are much more important.
Of course.
If you're in business, you probably don't do everything you can to squeeze everything out of something because that probably means stepping on someone else, and I don't like that. But in the world of sports...
You're winning.
I go back to rec basketball in college. I did everything I possibly could to get an advantage, and I don't care I want to beat you. That's sports, dude.
You play to win the game. Everybody's heard it a million times, right? You play to win the game, and that's what the Lightning are doing. And if you talk about a business, look at the revenues of teams that win their respective league championships. Winning makes owners money. It just does. Yeah. It gets GMs raises. It gets players raises. It makes owners money. Winning is super, super profitable.
Yeah. I would just be careful. I often like relating sports to real life, and that's not one I would carry into real life, the whole do anything you can to get ahead, because if you're on Wall Street and you're stealing people's entire retirement funds, that's not cool. You don't do anything you can to win there. But man, in sports, I am all for it because it's sports. There's a reason I chose to talk about sports for a living. It's because the consequences are pretty small. And so
when they hang the banner, there's no asterisk that says,
no.
Stanley Cup champions, but Nikita Kucherov was $9.5 million over the cap, and they shouldn't. There's no asterisk there. No. It's just a banner. Kobe said it, right? Friends hang. Sometimes banners hang forever. That banner hangs forever, and that's what matters.
What about the Florida Panthers? I mean, did they ever have a chance? What was any consensus there? I felt like the battle for Florida was cool, but the general idea was, hey, the Lightning are gonna win the whole time.
Florida was great the entire year. I've been in a group chat with a couple other hockey guys that we talk the game a lot, and when Florida was on top of the league early, 6-8 weeks into the season, we're kind of talking about how real are they? Is this an extended hot streak, or does this team look like they're for real? And I thought they looked for real, and I still think they're a great team. And one of the guys in the chat says, "Do you actually see them winning 4-7 against Tampa?" And I said, "Probably not." And my feelings haven't really changed. It's a good quality team with a lot of hope and a lot of things to be excited about. That's just not quite that team yet.
They're a
but
playoff
there's
team.
a lot
That's
of
it.
time for them. They're a playoff team for them. They're going to make some noise. They're going to keep doing it. And honestly, when you look at fans of Ottawa or something, these perennially awful teams, you'll take being a consistent playoff team. You take watching your team in May. It's exciting to do that. There's no shame in that for Florida. They've got plenty of time to take a step or two. Right now is not their time. Tampa's loaded. It is what it is. No shame on Florida. They had a great year.
Our second to last series, the Carolina Hurricanes beat the Nashville Predators in 6 games, 4-2. What are your thoughts there?
You know what? Nashville gave them some trouble, man. That was I went into that series thinking that
you poo-pooed them. You were like, "Oh, Nashville got no shot." People were mad about that.
I did
were upset.
poo-poo it. I did, and I think that day that we did that interview, I think they won a double overtime game.
Probably.
So,
that's just our luck, right?
What are you gonna do? Nashville gave them some trouble, and good on them. That's a team that's got some postseason experience themselves. They know how to win deep. They know how to win in overtime. Clearly, credit them. Carolina found their stride when they needed to, and they gutted it out in the way that winning teams do. And I thought it would be easier for them. It wasn't. Credit Nashville again. And I think that the cracks that we saw in Carolina are going to continue to manifest themselves in Tampa. And everybody's going to say, well, look at the shot count. Carolina's generating, all this offense. Tampa's going to have to be, on their heels. Something I noticed when I was going through stuff is that Carolina's leading the postseason in low danger shots. So they're leading the postseason in shots, which you think, oh man, they're generating a ton of offense. Like it's only going to be,
but they're not good shots.
They're not good shots, and that's what Toronto dealt with in their Game 7. They're not good quality chances. So you look at the raw stuff, and you think Carolina's just this offensive dynamo, and the dam's going to break soon, and they're going to put up 5-6 goals a game. And the underlying stuff doesn't support that. And I think that against a much better Tampa team that's got the winning DNA from just last season and and beyond previous years, I think that runs out for Carolina. I think they're going to have to retool how they do things. And Carolina goaltending, while it's been fine, it's not going to steal you a lot of games. It's been perfectly average, which again is fine, but when you're going up against a better team, you need to be better than average. And I don't think that's there yet for them.
So advanced analytics are really powerful often, even in the NFL. But often I really hate stats. Like fantasy football drives me nuts because people get excited. I'm like, dude, an interception can lie all the time. If I throw a great pass, it bounces off my receiver's forehead and gets picked off. It's a negative stat for me. That's ridiculous. So what I'm hearing about Carolina is that the stats from a surface level look great, but when you get deeper into the analytics of it, you go, oh, their shots aren't good shots. So they might have great numbers.
They're not quite
as
scary as they're not quite as scary as the box scores would make you think they are. And that's me. And there's going to be Carolina fans that in the comments that are like, oh, we're this, that, the other.
Defend our team.
That's fine. Defend your team. I would too. That's fine. I don't see it. I think that Vasilevsky's leading. Tampa Bay goaltending is leading the postseason in high danger save percentage. So you've got this combination now where Carolina has a hard time generating high danger chances anyway, and now this goaltending tandem, but it's mostly Vasilevsky. Andre Vasilevsky's the starting goaltender in Tampa. He's doing a great job of shutting down the high danger chances. So you're not getting them. The goalie's good against them. I just don't see how they can keep up offensively with Tampa, who is stout top to bottom. Again, it's one of those things.
So if Tampa Bay lost to Carolina, you'd be surprised, to say the least.
I would be quite surprised.
Hey, that'll be fun. I can't wait to talk about that in like 2 weeks.
You know what? And if I'm wrong in that, and if Carolina manages to gut out this really gritty 6 or 7 game series win, then I hope they win it all because they deserve it. And I'll happily take egg on my face for this really fun story because that's what it would be.
What could Carolina do to make you wrong?
How
do they beat Tampa?
Goaltending is going to have to perform better than it has so far, and again, it hasn't been bad so far, but it's going to be better. Yeah. It's going to have to really.
But
take
you have a guy get hot late in the year,
and that's what it's going to take. And that's what it's going to take. That's going to be part of it. They're going to have to work in the offensive zone for higher quality chances. They're going to have to test Vasilevsky. They're going to have to make this dude work. He's this big behemoth in net who's also freakishly athletic. It doesn't make any sense. how he works in net. When you're watching Tampa games, it's so hard to look away from their star power out skating. But when Carolina is moving the puck in the zone and you're watching them try to score, just watching Vasilevsky completely fill up the crease is shocking, because he gets down into what they call butterfly, which is when you put your legs down, you kind of make him into a V and you put the pads flat across the ice. And it's meant to prevent low shots and deflections and whatnot. This dude's so big and so limber, he can get into butterfly, which is a kneeling position, still take away the top part of the net. His reflexes are insane. His flexibility is insane. He takes everything away. He becomes a wall. And Carolina's going to have to solve that puzzle, which, they were able to do it against Nashville, kinda, but they're going to have to do a much better job of that in this series to have a chance.
The butterflies when the knees are down and the legs kind of go out either side. And
yeah,
it's like a wall.
Think if you're standing, if you're crouched, right, kind of a crouch position, and then you take the insides of your knees and you put them on the ground.
Oh, I've seen that all the time. I didn't know it's called butterfly. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that's and a goalie will do that when the puck is kind of bouncing around near him, or when a shot comes in, because it intends to take away the low parts of the ice. If a goalie who's got an effective butterfly position can effectively take away the entire 6-foot width of the net, and about 1.5 feet up, because that's the pad shelf. It's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet-ish. So you can take away that low part of the net, and what the sacrifice is, you're a little bit less agile, and you're lower, so you rely on reactions, not positioning, to make higher saves with your blocker and with your glove.
Yeah.
So it's very, goalies have their own tendencies on how to do things, and everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, but when you're that big and that athletic, you can afford to take the low parts of the net away, because your athleticism allows you to jump back up if a shot comes in high, push across the crease. There's a lot of different ways that goalies' athleticism can really take over for them, and he's just another example of that.
I think it's important to over-explain things. When I write my film analysis videos with football, I write as if my dad was watching, because my dad, God bless him, is an idiot, doesn't know anything about cover 2 and how to break down defense. So I try to over-explain. Yeah. You mentioned a phrase. You said low-risk shots, which my inference was that means it's a shot that doesn't have a good chance of going in. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so Carolina has a lot of those, which means they're getting a lot of shots, but they're not actually good shots. Again, repeating what we said, but it's good to for anyone who doesn't know.
So kind of a top-down perspective of this would be, you look at what's called the offensive zone, and that's when the team that is attacking is in the area of the ice that houses the goal in which they are trying to score on. They are in their offensive zone. In the offensive zone, there are 2 big circles that span across the ice. Those are the face-off circles. And then from in there, there's these hash marks that go inward. And they call that general rectangle from kind of the front of the mouth out to the top of the face-off circles and wide as the hash marks is what they call the slot. The slot is the high danger scoring opportunity. It's close to the net, but it's not too close. It allows you to attack all sides of the net. You often have passing options, you have shooting options. It's a really dangerous place to be. And if you get a good goal scorer like Nikita Kucherov or Pasternak or Ovechkin, and they get the puck in the slot, it's probably going to be a goal. It's a really, really dangerous spot. And then you get further out and further wide, and it becomes less dangerous. If you they showed a graphic after the second period of the Game 7 Toronto Montreal game, and Toronto had 19 shots at the time. 10 of them came from what we call the outer offensive zone. So it would be far back, so near the blue line, and near the boards. So you're as far away from the net as you can be in those spots. And not only that, because you're on one side, the goalie can kind of cheat to that same side and take away your angles and come out and cut the angle of the shot down, because it's not about what the player sees, it's about what the puck sees when you're trying to score, right? There's kind of this physics thing that goes with that. So they're generating shots from these places that are very easy to prevent goals being scored from, and they're not doing a good enough job of easy to block, easy to see coming. It's easy for a goalie to have some sixth sense about him and say, okay, this is where the guy is. My teammate's got this guy over here as the passing option tied up, so that's not going to go over there. So goalie can really commit to a shot coming from there, and if a goalie can sit on a shot, kind of like a hitter sitting on a fastball, you're going to have a hard time getting it by him. And that's where Toronto was generating chances from, and that's where Carolina has kind of formed a habit of generating chances from, is these low danger, easy to save environments.
That is why we brought Austin on. That's the nerdy hockey stuff I came for. I learned so much. That's awesome. I love that.
And you'll see it like if you it doesn't take long, like a couple of periods, and you're gonna find. I do this thing all the time where like when I'm watching something, I'll watch like horse racing, and I'll watch like 3 races and be like, I think jockey should have done something different there. Like I know what I'm talking about. You're gonna notice it. If you watch
that's
a game,
bad shot. That's a good shot.
You're gonna see a guy throw a weak little wrist shot on from like 70 feet away, and you're gonna be like, man, what are you doing there? And there's this old hockey adage, pucks at the net. It's always a good thing to put the puck on the net. And generally that's kind of true because if you get the puck near the net, there's always deflections, there's skates to hit, there's rebounds. Stuff generally happens positively when you get the puck near the net. But sometimes it's just a waste of a possession. If you just toss the puck on the net just to do it, to say you got a shot, the goalie's going to paddle save it into the far corner. The defenseman playing that corner is going to take it and push it up ice, and now we got an odd man rush the other way, and that was actually a terrible idea. That stuff happens, and these are these low danger chances that that we're talking about. That oftentimes just they're not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze in that in that situation.
You know what I love, and we'll get into the final matchup in a moment. But the way I would describe hockey to anybody who doesn't know is I would say hockey is the perfect marriage of soccer and football, where you have the free flowing form and the goals and a lot of the similar setups. In hockey and soccer, like if you watch them, you see a lot of similar parallels between the way they attack the net, but then it's also paired with the toughness and the grit of football and the hitting and the vibrance and what's the word I'm working for? When a guy hits the wall, the boards, it's like
the rattling of
impact.
The boards. Exactly.
So hockey to me pairs the best of soccer, the best of football, and puts them right together.
And for anybody who's
amazing.
a soccer fan who's watching this and maybe wants to get into hockey, you'll notice that hockey chances that are good scoring chances come in the same way. It's when a guy, it's typically you're looking for numerical advantages, right? 2-on-1, 3-on-2. You want to have the man advantage. And it's getting a goalie to cheat to one side, because the goalie can't leave the guy with the puck, right? Then he'll just shoot it by him. So the goalie, whether they know the pass is coming or not, has to stay with the puck. So now it's this game of trying to get people as far away from the goalie, so the goalie has to cover more ground to make the save. So I'm going to come in on the right side, and the goalie's going to have to stick with me. And I got my teammate, my line mate, going on, the goalie's right, my left, and there's just this yawning cage here. So now my goal is to try to get him the puck and get him a shooting opportunity faster than the goalie can push off the post and get to that side of the net. And soccer goals are the same, a lot of times the same way. You're just looking for that way to get across the crease or across the net and give your teammate an opportunity to shoot at an open net. It's the same deal. Obviously, soccer's got more players. The physics of it are different, but a lot of scoring chances are generated in the same way.
I watched a lot of soccer because I work running cameras for MLS games, and I hate soccer. I'm not even going to pretend I like it. It drives me nuts. But there are some redeeming qualities, and hockey just takes the best parts about soccer and makes it watchable. And it's like, for me, hockey is a far superior version of a similar sport to soccer without all the nonsense and extra stupid stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. I've kind of run the gamut on my soccer opinion. You're never going to find a bigger soccer fan than me come World Cup time. Like, I'm always like, let's go. I'll get up at like 5 in the morning to watch.
I'll use it someday.
I'm not qualified to talk about soccer in the least, but I'll get up at like 5 a.m. to watch Belgium and Netherlands, and I'm like, I can't pronounce half these guys' names, and I have no idea who's even good. But there's something about when everybody comes together, it's the world stage. You want to watch it. There's a gravitas to it, right? So that's the same deal. Soccer, it's got its qualities, absolutely. There's some stuff about it that I would change, but it's fine.
So the Vegas Golden Knights beat the Minnesota Wild in 7 games.
Sure did.
They won it 4-3 the series. Down to the wire. It was fun. Tell me about the series. What happened? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it should have taken Vegas this long. And this is no disrespect toward Minnesota. They just they made the play-in last season. They lost to the Vancouver Canucks in the play-in, so this is a team that's kind of on the brink of being a team that can, really challenge for the postseason year in, year out. And here they are again, solidifying their postseason spot. And they took an experienced, tough, physical, gritty Vegas team to 7 games with a worse roster. So you credit them. I know people that have picked Vegas to win the whole thing, and I disagree with that. But there's some merit to that because they're a great team, and Minnesota took them to 7. So, as it's kind of become a running theme that this, you say credit this team because the team that's worse on paper shows up and they give the better team a really really good series. Obviously, we're not going to see Minnesota anymore, but Kirill Kaprizov, he's the Wild's rookie phenom. He is a reason to watch Minnesota Wild games. If you couldn't name another player on the Wild, you couldn't care less about the Wild. This dude is something different. He is so fun. He's so flashy. He's so exciting. He's so skilled. I've never seen a guy, or I rarely have seen a guy approach offense the way he does, where like he'll collect the puck near center ice, and then he'll throw this weird skating maneuver where he'll like rotate 90 degrees and skate on his outward edges just to do it. And then he comes out of that weird maneuver with like way more speed than you think he should. And then he just burns to the net and like shoots the puck into a puck-sized hole above the goalie's shoulder. And you're like, I don't know what I just saw. You're just like stunned. That's what this kid is.
Remind me of his name. What's his name?
Kirill Kaprizov. It's kind of a funny spelling. His last name is spelled Kaprizov. He's 24, so he's an old rookie. But this was his entering into the league. He played in 24. The KHL, which is the Continental Hockey League. It's the Russian NHL. It's like the second best league in the world, probably.
Wow.
That's where he came from.
Got it.
And he's just this flashy, freakishly talented. He's only 5'9", which the game is getting smaller. 5'9", 20 years ago, you are not an NHL player. It doesn't matter how good you are. You just aren't. It's being that small. Then he's 5'9".
He's fast, right?
He's a bullet. He's freakish the way that this dude moves. He was a 5th round pick for them in 2015. So a late round pick, because there's 7 rounds in the NHL draft. So he was drafted 6 years ago, in the 5th round, and has just now made his appearance, and it has been worth the wait.
And he made it hard for Vegas.
He makes it hard for everybody. But yes, he made it hard for Vegas because the way he buzzes around like a gnat, he just you never get rid of him. He's so flashy, he's so skilled, he's so fast, he just doesn't ever stop. He's worth the price of admission for any Wild game. If you find yourself in the Great Lakes area and want to catch some hockey, he is worth it.
So Vegas beat Minnesota barely. How were they expected to be able to beat Colorado now? Or are they?
I mean, it's not a great start, 7-1. This is not how you want to start things off. I think it's the series to watch right now, even more so than Tampa and Carolina. It's 1-0 now, so you've kind of got this added, Tampa or Colorado rather obviously has a bigger advantage than they already had by being, in my opinion, the better team. You did this really devastating Game 1 win, and now they're going to carry that momentum forward. Vegas is a team that they spent a lot of salary cap chicanery to acquire Alex Pietrangelo this last offseason. He's an amazing defenseman, came from St. Louis. He's got a lot of experience. He's a great defenseman there. So they're going to have to lean on guys like that who have been there before. Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone, these are veteran guys who have played in big games who they're going to have to lean on to generate some stuff for them. I say stuff because the answer's hard. You can't say, if with Colorado, it's hard to say what should I do, because it's easy for some teams. It's okay. You need this is where they have a weak point. We need to attack that. We need to go. With Colorado, it's like you watch tape and you're like, what do we do? Like, they're just really good. So what's our solution here? So that's why I say, Mark Stone, Pacioretty, these guys just need to have that stuff, and we don't really know what that is yet. And I'm not even sure if they know what that is yet, but they're going to have to figure that out here soon because Colorado's not looking back.
Well, I'm curious, man, is there anything else as you look around the league, any other notes you have to share about the NHL playoffs?
Special teams are a big thing, and we haven't talked about that a lot in our time here. Special teams being the penalty kill and the power play.
I learned from Nathan. Yeah, okay. Nathan told me that's power play, and what's the other penalty?
Penalty kill. So it's when a penalty happens. It's either the team killing the penalty or the team trying to score on the man advantage.
What's a penalty kill? I've never heard that in my life.
So a guy takes a penalty, you hooking, tripping, whatever. The team is not killing the penalty because it's 2 minutes. There's a 2-minute minor. Guys got to leave. Got to take a break. because he made a mistake, and now the team that he plays for is now going to have to play a man down 5-on-4 or 5-on-3 or 4-on-3, whatever
so
iteration.
It's a power play from the opposite perspective, basically.
Yes. When a power play happens, there's a team on the power play, and there's a team on the penalty kill. They are killing off the penalty that their teammate took. That's usually 2 minutes or 4 sometimes. And so go ahead.
Well, it means the same thing. It's just different perspectives.
Exactly.
I would have never. That's cool. I learned so much.
It's referred to as you might hear it as referred to as the PK, the penalty kill.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't usually call power plays PPs because we're all 13. We can't go saying that on NBC.
The PP. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So it's we usually don't abbreviate or initialize power play. We do penalty kill. It's the PK.
Anyway, you brought up special teams.
Yes, the teams that do well on both ends of that, shocker, are the teams that win games, and it's because in the playoffs, especially in the later rounds, teams are so evenly matched. They've hit their strides. They know what they need to be doing. Any small edge in a game, again, like I said in the first episode a bunch, where there's only 5 or 6, 7 maybe different scoring events on average in a game. Every little edge that might be able to take a goal off the board or get you a goal you might not have had prior is going to be a huge deal. So the teams that can get goals on the power play when they're given an opportunity are gonna really, really thrive, and the teams that can take those off the board are gonna thrive, and the teams that can do both are the ones that usually hoist it at the end. And right now that's Colorado. Their penalty kill is decent. Their power play is spectacular. They're looking good right now on that front. Montreal's penalty kill, very good. Their power play, not great. So in terms of a team that can kind of do both, Colorado's 5th in the penalty kill, and they're 1st by a huge margin in power play. That's my favorite special teams group right now, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise considering how good they are. But I think that's going to continue to be something that helps them out. Vegas's, and I think this is a big thing as to why they went 7. Vegas's power play was absolutely horrendous against Minnesota. They had 17 power play opportunities. They cashed in on 2 of them. That's about 12%.
Whoa, that's low.
Terrible. For reference, Colorado had 17 opportunities, just like Vegas did. They scored on 8 of them. That's 6 goals right there, difference that you've earned.
Yeah.
And their penalty kill, Vegas's, it's not great. It's one of the worst amongst teams still in it right now. Vegas has to fix that. It might not rear its ugly head in this series, but
it might, because they might lose. I mean,
I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess that's true with Colorado because it's so good. It might, but if they do manage to get past Colorado, which again I don't see happening, that's going to have to figure itself out. This is not a team that can win playing as poorly on the special teams there right now. And again, Colorado, and I used Colorado. It wasn't because they're in the same series. It was just happened to be how the stats worked out that Colorado's looking really good and Vegas is looking really bad. It's how it worked out. But these are teams that you look for on special teams. Colorado needs to keep what they're doing up. Vegas needs to make some serious improvements. And then there's teams like Boston, whose penalty kill actually hasn't been great. Their power play has been exceptional though. They're 8 of 23, which is quite good. It's 35%. It's a big deal. Special teams matter because you don't get a lot of them. You don't score a lot of goals. So it's a high leverage moment, and that's not an official stat. That's kind of just a way to describe it. There's a lot of leverage that goes into power play opportunities for both teams. They're usually the biggest points of the game, or can be the biggest points of the game, or they can turn momentum in a serious way. So if you're watching games, or
the Jets scored their first goal in that big 3-goal comeback on a power play.
It can completely change things. It can completely turn the tide because 3 goals seems like this insurmountable amount, but 2 goals, that ain't that much. If you're looking for if you got a whole period to play, and they didn't, right? But if you got a whole period to play, you only need to make up 2 goals. You can do that. It's not crazy common, but it's not out of this world. 3-2 is such a different thing, and then 2-1, hey, you're a bounce away. All of this. Players think about this. This is a real mental thing that happens where you look at the scoreboard and it's 5-2. That's a whole lot different than 5-3, and that's a whole lot different than 5-4. And just like that, you got the juice in your backup, you're playing, and you come back. That's how this happens.
Austin, that was phenomenal. Plug your podcast. What's your podcast called?
Uncaged MMA is our podcast. I run it with my my partner John. We are working now. We actually just finished up a couple of interviews. We spoke with Danny Castillo, and he was our primary interview. We also spoke with Eric Koch. He's a UFC fighter as well. Both of these guys, what they have in common is they fought the current 155-pound UFC champion, Diamond Dustin Poirier. We are recording, producing, editing, creating a really awesome documentary on him. He comes from an awesome background. He's done a lot for charities in his local Louisiana neighborhoods. An awesome champion, a great guy. We wanted to properly immortalize him in a video format. So we spoke with some guys that he's fought before to talk about him. So that's coming very, very soon, on top of some more traditional podcast format, talking MMA news, all things combat sports.
Absolutely, my man. Hey, that's awesome. I love you, brother. I need people to understand. It is 12:21 a.m. It's after midnight, 21 minutes after midnight. This dude's like, let's talk hockey. I love it. I can't thank you enough. Man, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's been such a blast for me. I learn a lot every time I talk to you, and it makes me so happy.
Appreciate being here, Zach. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the plug and all the attention for our great sport.
All right, brother. Man, I love talking to Austin. I think people don't realize I've known him for 15 years. And so I want to now use that and shift gears to my conversation with Nathan Shield. I got to be honest. I put out my, NHL playoff extravaganza with Nathan Shield in it, and he got a lot of hate, and I thought that was very unfair because people don't realize that I've never done a podcast with Nathan Shield before. I've only talked to him twice, this episode including, over any kind of live communication. We DM, we've emailed, but of course, when you compare my conversational comfortability between Nathan Shield and Austin, one guy who I've known since I was 10 years old, another guy who it's my second conversation ever with, of course, that's not a fair comparison. And I just think, man, if you have problems, come to me. Don't bother Nathan Shield. That's not fair. I think he's valuable on the show because every time I talk to him, I learn something. I go, wow, I didn't know that. I learned new details and nerdy hockey stuff. And I love having him on the show. I think any criticism is honestly unfair and doesn't really understand the situation. And, man, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Nathan Shield. The guy, Nathan, I got your back. I love you, buddy. And please enjoy my conversation with him now. Joining me now is a guy I'm really excited to talk to. Nathan Shield, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I am good. I think we haven't talked. Normally, we get in the green room, we talk a little bit, we get going. I literally, we answer the call, and I'm wearing sunglasses to see my computer. I couldn't find my glasses. I got a sunburn on my face. I climbed a mountain yesterday. I'm dealing with family stuff. I'm moving. Oh my God, is it good to talk to a friend? I think I want to start today by asking. So we're talking about the NHL playoffs today, and I want to say first of all, thanks for the time. I'm excited to see you, and I'm curious if what playoff series from round one surprised you the most?
Yeah, this is actually pretty exciting series. I'm excited to talk about this one because there's a lot of drama, a lot to say, really, a lot of questions to be asked. So I would have to say Toronto. Game 7 was last night. Toronto actually blew a 3-1 lead, so it's pretty crazy. The hockey world's kind of going crazy for this one.
It's like, for me, I would have thought that Edmonton, the Oilers losing to the Jets in 4 games, Connor McDavid against this amazing goalie. For me, that was the one I was like, I can't believe not only that the Jets won, whatever, but that they beat them 4-0. I was honestly thinking you were going to say that. I know you texted me. I tried not to. So why this game, Game 7? Why Toronto? Why that series instead of this other one?
Yeah, they're both pretty insane. I mean, the North this year, I think I touched on it last episode. It's kind of been crazy all year. People haven't been sure what's going to happen. So I'd love to talk about that series after. But I think Toronto was really crazy just because the expectations were so high. They won the North Division pretty handily. They had a lot of players look really good. Austin Matthews, their star player, led the league in goals. He's going to win the Rocket Richard for scoring the most goals in the NHL. And it just looked like it was their year. They haven't won a Stanley Cup in almost 50 years now. Or over 50 years, excuse me, almost 60 years now. So it's been a long time. Haven't won a series in more than 15 years. So Toronto's been waiting, and it seemed like it was their time. They were up 3-1, and then they just fell apart. So crazy stuff.
So Toronto, the Maple Leafs, all their fans, they're so happy. They're so excited. Have a 3-1 lead, and then they blow it. I mean, that reminds me of the NBA Finals when I guess Cleveland beat the Golden State Warriors. LeBron beat Steph Curry, came back 3-1. It's a very similar situation where this fan base waiting and hoping, and this team that thinks they have it, and it's stolen from them. That's amazing, man. I mean, so why do you think this happened? Why did they fall apart after a 3-1 lead in their series?
And that's kind of the question right now. I mean, what went wrong? I think a big blame has to fall. You know, I hate to call out a player like this, but it has to fall on the first line. Like the top three guys for Toronto is Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander. They're three young guys, all have been in Toronto for a little bit, but they're really kind of coming into their prime now. You know, Matthews, like I said, he led the league in scoring. And then in the playoffs, he just couldn't really get it done. He put up 5 points in the 7 games. You get a point for a goal and an assist. So he put up 41 goals in 52 regular season games. So he's scoring pretty consistently in the regular season. And then the playoffs, he only scored 1 goal. So that was pretty shocking. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. He just didn't do anything. He just felt it didn't show up, sounds like.
Yeah, he didn't show up. And then Mitch Marner, who plays along with Austin Matthews on their first line, they play together. So they kind of work together. They put up a lot of points together. It's kind of a dynamic duo. And he really struggled in the playoffs too. He put up 67 points in the regular season. Like I said, a goal or assist in the point. So that's a pretty good number. I mean, that's more than a point per game. And then in the playoffs, he only put up 4 points in 7 games.
Oh, wow. So they had a bad series, sounds like, all around.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that player. So I want to clarify something, because when you say a player didn't show up, there's an emotional response. People get like very angry, and what I mean by that is he just didn't do what was expected of him. I mean, you know, the expectations are high. You thought he was going to do well, and it's not like he didn't show up to play, but the performance didn't follow. You know what I mean? It's like I think it's a harsh way to put it. Didn't show up, but man, when your best player leads the league in score in goals, you're like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah. I mean, again, I know people get defensive about this stuff. I personally get defensive about this stuff as well. I don't want to take anything away from them personally. You know, don't attack them or anything like that. But you set a standard. You're paid to play a certain way. And when you don't live up to that standard, it's kind of on you when you're kind of the heart and soul of the team.
How do you think Maple Leafs fans feel? Do they feel defensive of their guy, or are they frustrated with their guy? Like, we're paying you. You're a best player. You know, you gotta. We expect you to carry us through.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to say because, you know, there's always going to be a few fans that are like, you know what, screw this guy. We're paying you all this money. We need you to score, and then you don't show up, and they're going to get maybe a little toxic, maybe go after the guy personally, stuff like that. Obviously, don't do that. That's a horrible thing to do. But I think for the most part, I mean, all around, it seems like people are just kind of disappointed just in the performances of the players, the GM a little bit as well, because he made a few moves that didn't really work out, and it kind of cost them a lot. I could get into that if you want.
Yeah, what moves did the Maple Leafs make to try to make a run that just didn't work out?
Yeah, so the biggest move they made was they brought in Nick Foligno at the trade deadline. He was the captain in Columbus, you know, veteran guy. He's won in the playoffs before. He's a good player too, so they were expecting a lot out of him. They gave up a lot. They gave up a first-round pick and 2 fourth-round picks, and he's an unrestricted free agent, so it's a pure rental. He can go wherever he wants in the offseason. So they really gave up all these picks for the playoffs. They knew this is our year. We got to make a run. We're spending big on this guy, and he put up 1 point in 7 games, so 1 assist in 7 games.
That's brutal, man. I mean, you're making a move to make a run, and it didn't work out, and that's got to sting. That's got to hurt. Man, I don't know. That's you bet your future, and it didn't even get rewarded for it.
And Nick Foligno is not going to sign back in Toronto. They don't have the money to keep him, so they're going to have him for like 20 games, and then now he's going to leave Toronto. So it's a lot. It's a lot for what they got.
That's a devastating loss, man. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Did they make any other moves down the stretch other than that player?
No, but they had a few guys that came in at the beginning of the season that didn't really perform as well as people may have thought. Joe Thornton in the playoffs was particularly poor, I thought. He's an older guy, veteran. He's a Hall of Famer for sure, but he just wasn't that great in the playoffs, only 1 point. And they kind of just, it seems like a lot of the guys that kind of needed to show up didn't really do it. Wayne Simmons was a new addition as well. He kind of brings a grit to the team that he didn't really bring in the playoffs. Wasn't too physical, only put up a point. So he was kind of disappointing as well. And then they brought in some defensemen that were pretty poor in the playoffs as well. So all around, I mean, it's a lot of disappointment. There's going to be a lot of questions at Toronto's general manager, Kyle Dubas, in the coming weeks.
Well, there was probably a sense in Toronto like, this is the year. We finally we're putting it together. We're going to make a run. And then you get a 3-1 lead, and you're like, yeah, like it's going to plan. It's working, the sense of hope and optimism, and it all came tumbling down, man. What did Montreal do to come back and win, 3 games and win the series?
I think the biggest thing that Montreal did was their coach, Dominic Ducharme, really found a way to limit that first line. So he had a few guys that he was putting out there pretty consistently against Matthews and Marner that were just shutting them down. Philip Deneau, the center, was matched up against Matthews pretty much all season. And he kind of struggled in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I'm not sure if they studied film or what, but he was locked down. He really just like limited Matthew. He wasn't shooting as much. That Matthews is rather. And he was just like this. They just shut them down offensively and really took away their swagger. So that was pretty crazy. And then, like I mentioned last episode, Montreal's defense is pretty solid, and their goaltender is arguably one of the best Canadian goalies of all time. So he was solid, but I thought Toronto didn't test him enough in the last few games as well.
So do you think the narrative is that Toronto blew it rather than Montreal took it from them?
Yes, I think Toronto is kind of known to collapse. A few years ago, I can't remember when exactly. I think it was maybe 2012 or 2014, somewhere around there. They blew a 3-1 lead against Boston, or a 4-1 lead, in Game 7. So they were up 4-1. They let them come back and lost in overtime. And it's kind of a theme. Toronto kind of blows it, and it's kind of a narrative at this point. I mean, I was hoping they were going to win this first round series. They haven't won since 2004 in the first round. I was hoping they were kind of get away from that narrative, but I mean, it just keeps coming back. Toronto just can't seem to get it done in the postseason. It's kind of tough to see because they're an exciting team. I wanted to see them go far.
Let's talk about what happened with the Edmonton Oilers, because I would have thought, at minimum, I thought it'd be competitive. You got this great goalie, Connor McDavid, this great scorer, and I'm like, they're both named Connor, actually. Connor, I forget, what's his name?
Hellebuck.
Hellebuck. I love that name. Connor Hellebuck. Connor McDavid, the goalie versus the scorer. And I'm like, this is kind of the matchup of ages. Like, you're like so excited to watch these two guys go head to head. And Hellebuck, the goalie, dominated the matchup. You're like, wow, they won 4-0. There's one game where the Oilers didn't score at all. They won it 1-0 in overtime. That's unbelievable. And credit to the other goalie on the other side too. And anytime you have the whole game, nobody scores. It's a big deal. The only score was to win in overtime. But it's like, I cannot fathom that Edmonton didn't even win one game. And then there's that series where in Game 3, Edmonton had the lead, 8 minutes left, up 3 goals. And they gave the game right back to the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets score 3 goals in like 3 minutes. They go to overtime and win the game. And it's like, what a collapse. You couldn't even win one game. So do you share that same sense of, holy crap, how did that happen with Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah. I think you can go back to the last episode too. I mean, I was definitely critical of the Jets. I thought they really struggled down the stretch. I thought, if they win this series, it might be in 7, but it's going to be a stretch. They've really struggled. Edmonton has had their number all season. It's going to take a lot to beat them. But, credit to Paul Maurice, the Jets coach. He developed a scheme that really worked. They got some players to come back and start playing like the way they had in the regular season at just the right time, and it just really worked. It seemed like they kind of wanted it maybe more than Edmonton. I'm not sure what it was, but Edmonton, that's kind of what happens when you build a team to just outscore their opponent. They have the first line in Edmonton of McDavid, Draisaitl. Those two together are dynamic. I mentioned that last time. They're phenomenal together, but when those are your two guys, you really are relying on them to win you games. And when you go up against a goaltender who seems to know what they're doing. I mean, they really just didn't get it done. I mean, Edmonton gets no depth scoring. I think I mentioned that in the yeah. So in hockey, there's four lines. So your first two lines are going to be particularly good at scoring. Normally, those are going to be your more skilled players, higher paid. Those are the guys that are really expected to score. Third line and fourth line are more expected to kind of keep the game even. Not give up a goal. Maybe, yeah, pretty much survive, but get a goal or two here and there. I mean, you're not supposed to score consistently, but you really need that depth scoring to win. You need your fourth line to score a goal here or there, especially in crunch time in the playoffs. So Edmonton really gets no depth scoring. I got it in my notes here. I wrote down the point totals. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, Edmonton's fourth line had one player put up 2 points, and that was it. He had 2 assists. So that was it. Points. The other 2 players on that line, 0 points. They were minuses. So in hockey, in 5-on-5, if you score, you get a point. You get scored on, you get a minus. So that line altogether was a minus 6. Those 3 players combined. So minus 2 for the line, but minus 6 for the players combined. The third line put up a combined 3 points. So that's a goal, 2 goals and an assist. So, I mean, the Jets, like if you look at the point totals for the Jets, I mean, they're putting up significantly more that third and fourth line. And it's just pretty remarkable how poorly Edmonton's third and fourth line played. And when those first 2 lines aren't scoring, you really need those guys to step up.
Well, hockey's a lot like basketball where it's because the same amount of players on the court, a lot of stuff like that. And when your backups are in, you're just hoping they can hold things together so your starters can get rest and come back in the game. And it sounds like not only were they not holding things together long enough for Connor McDavid and the starting lineup to get rest, they were giving away points.
Yeah. I mean, they really couldn't do anything. It was pretty clear that just from watching that their mindset was more, we got to survive this instead of let's get on the offense, let's get some momentum for our team. It was pretty clear that they were playing maybe scared. Maybe, I'm not sure what it was. I mean, maybe when you're down, the pressure's on a little bit more, but I haven't really seen a team play like that. It was pretty shocking, to be honest, because it was just, like I said, it was just incredibly clear that they were just saying, let's play defensively, let's get it, let's dump it in their end, let's get off the ice, let's just play it safe. So it was pretty crazy, especially when you're losing in a series. You really need to get that momentum. So.
Well, I don't know if there's a stat or a number. Like in football, you have time of possession. So I don't know if there's a time of possession thing like that in hockey, but I know watching that series, I watched almost every game. I didn't watch I skipped the entire 0-0 game because I was just bored. I was like I'm like, I can't do it, man. I watched like overtime and was happy with that because I record everything. But my point is that watching the 3 games I watched in that series, it felt like the Jets had the puck almost all the time. I felt like it's possession after possession after possession. I'm like, man, like Edmonton just can't even get anything going, let alone get a goal. Is that how it felt to you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Jets have one of the best center cores in the league. So the center is going to be the guy that takes the face off. So it's pretty important to have good centers because whenever there's a whistle, if you have a good center, you're going to get immediate possession. You can go back on offense, stuff like that.
Well, they won that game in overtime. The game 3, they had that 3, big comeback. They win in overtime. They scored in overtime off a faceoff. So that's the difference in winning the series almost. It sounds like, I mean, that things like that, just they add up very slowly. You got a bad bench, got a better center, got a better goalie. I mean, over time, the little things add up, and that's how you get the Jets surprising people winning 4-0.
Yeah. I mean, there was another big narrative in this game that I forgot to mention up to this point, but it was the special teams was pretty big for the Jets as well. So so if you take a penalty in hockey, you sit in the penalty box. It's kind of unlike other sports in that sense. So you'll play 5-on-4 if the other team takes a penalty. On the
power
opposite
play
side,
is
you take
special
a penalty.
teams.
Yes. So
Got
power
it.
play and penalty kill is going to be special teams. So for Edmonton in the regular season, they had the best power play in the league. So 5-on-4, they're scoring 27% of the time, which is far and away the best in the NHL. The average is probably around 18 or 19%. So 27% is pretty remarkable. So that was their regular season. In the postseason, they dropped to 18.2%, which is still solid, but that's a pretty significant drop from where they were. And the Jets were good on the power play. They scored, I believe it was 21% of the time in the postseason. So they really took advantage of those opportunities where Edmonton really didn't, and I think that was a big difference maker as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just remember that hit when I can't get Game 3 out of my head. Game 3, they're up 3 points, 8 minutes left. The Edmonton Oilers are, and one of the players in Edmonton took a cheap shot against the Jets, just like an unnecessary dumb hit that gave the Jets a power play. The Jets get a power play, 8 minutes left, they score, gave them momentum that led to them winning the game. It's like I remember watching the hit, going like, "That's so like, why do that? You're up 3. You have the game in the bag if you just don't screw it up." It's like, man, they just gave it away. It's like, oh my goodness, Edmonton.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, I mentioned before that it was going to take a special performance from Winnipeg to beat them, but the Edmonton team that I thought we were going to see did not seem to be here in the postseason. I mean, the Jets had their players played well. I mean, everyone you would expect on the Jets to put up points did. But no one was really out of their mind, It wasn't like anyone on the Jets really offensively stole the game. I mean, Connor Hellebuck was phenomenal. He had a 9.5 save percentage, which is like ridiculously good. And a really good save percentage in the NHL, if you don't know, is a 9.2, is like really good. So a 9.5 is unbelievable.
Well, I think in Game 2, he stopped 38 shots with no goals. And that's a low amount of shots, but that's still like an overtime game, nothing. I mean, just nothing, the whole game. It blows my mind. I want to say too, it's interesting. Like I don't remember exactly what you said in your prediction when you predicted the series, but it was pretty clear. Like we thought it was going to be competitive at minimum, and that's the general consensus was this is going to be a competitive, close game series. It might be 3-3 at one point, go to Game 7, and even like other people, they were calling Connor Hellebuck the MVP. And if you have the MVP of the league on your team, you're expected to at minimum compete. To get swept 4-0 is just a wild surprise to me. Like I think that everybody didn't see that coming.
It happened. I mean, I feel kind of bad because on the last episode I was kind of promising a great series here. I mean, I said Oilers are awesome. They're fun to watch. They're super offensive, and that just didn't seem to be the case. You might have thought I was talking about the Jets when I was saying that. So it was pretty remarkable. It's going to be really exciting to see what happens in the North with Edmonton and Toronto, because in the North the pressure is way crazier. At the beginning of the season, there were 2 coaches in the North that both got fired within 25 games. So the pressure to win is especially high in the North in Canada. So it's going to be a crazy offseason for both of these teams as they look to gear back up and keep competing while their window is still open.
Yeah, there's so much passion in Canada. And also, too, I got to say, that's why sports are awesome. Is it sometimes things, you think you have everything figured out. If we all know, obvious outcome coming. And it just completely takes a left turn. And we just can't even, that's why I love sports so much, is that it's not when I actually hate when I know for example, in Formula 1 for a long time, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes have dominated Formula 1. And it's boring because you know who's going to win every single time. And then occasionally you get a guy who comes and challenges them and you're like, it's fun because you don't know what to expect. And when you don't know the outcome, it's so exciting. I'm curious now. I want to shift to this. What was your favorite series to watch in round 1 of the NHL playoffs?
Oh man, this is a tough question. They were all pretty fun. They were all.
You
pretty
can say
fun.
a couple.
Yeah.
Oh, the NHL playoffs are phenomenal, dude. Like every matchup feels like it's even the ones that are blowouts are still got interesting storylines. It's so full of fun. You can say a couple too if you want. Like what was exciting? Like you watch at home and you're like, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome. Just spew some love for me.
All right. Yeah. I mean, probably my favorite series to watch. It wasn't too competitive, but it would have to be the Colorado Avalanche versus St. Louis. Yeah. I mean, the Avalanche. I mentioned it in the last episode. They're phenomenal to watch. They're so fast. They're so offensively gifted. And they're just like incredible this year. I mean, if they don't win the Stanley Cup, I'll be pretty surprised. I'm going out on a limb a little bit. I mean, not really. They're kind of the favorite, but If they lose, I might look like a fool, but they're so good right now. They're putting up a ton of points. They swept St. Louis, and then they just dominated the first game of the first game of the second round against Vegas, and they're just phenomenal.
Well, Colorado outscored St. Louis 20-7 in 4 games. Like, wow! Oh my goodness! And it sounds like to me, why you liked it is it's good hockey. Like you're like, for example, when you watch the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL, you watch Patrick Mahomes. It's just good football. You're like, wow, it's entertaining, it's organized, it's competent, it's really entertaining. Is that what you like? Is you just love hockey? It's like it's good, fundamental, fun hockey.
Yeah. It's nice to see a team kind of playing up to their potential too. There's sometimes you see a team where it's like, wow, these guys could be really special if they can just piece it together. If the coach knows what to do, if they hit all these notes, they're going to be phenomenal. And it seems like the Avs are really doing it this year.
They're maxing out.
Yep, their star players are playing phenomenal. Their goalie's playing well. Everything's going right for them right now. They're undefeated in their first 5, so they've already won the first game of the second series, and they're just phenomenal. They're so fun to watch, and yeah, it's just great stuff.
I second that, man. There's a storyline in the NFL right now. There's a quarterback moved teams and got with his old coach, and I'm like, man, if they max this out, it's a phenomenal situation. So anytime you get to see a team that reaches their full potential, which is very rare in the world of sports, it's very rare to see a team that actually reaches the potential they have. Colorado's doing that. I mean, you got anything else for me? Is there anything else you look around NHL, you're like, that was awesome?
Yeah, I think the first round series with Florida was pretty fun too. It was the Panthers versus the Lightning, so it was the first time they've really had that series where it's the Battle of Florida. I thought that was really exciting. It's kind of a nice rivalry brewing too in Florida.
Oh, that's never happened before?
No, that's never happened. They've never really been good at the same time, so that was fun to see. Only went 6 games. I was hoping the Panthers would push it to 7 because that would have been really fun. But it was a good series. A lot of promise in Florida. They got a young team. They're going to be pretty good. Tampa's still really good. They won it last year, so that was a good series. But I could really just go down the list. I mean, aside from Colorado sweeping and the Jets sweeping, every series went at least 6 games. So it's really competitive this year. I mean, it's been a really fun playoffs thus far.
Yeah, the Islanders 1-6. They beat Pittsburgh. It was like I was like, Pittsburgh, man. But Islanders fans are upset, are really happy. The Bruins beat the Capitals in 5, and that was, I think, more competitive than a 5-game series would look from the outside. Boston won 5-1. Can you talk about how, I guess maybe why that seemed more competitive? Because I think we talked about this before. Even though Boston dominated, if you look from the outside in, if you're watching the games, I watched those games. I mean, the Capitals, it was back and forth and fun and intense, and it was unfortunate. It just looks bad from the outside looking in at the Capitals.
I think this was a pretty evenly ranked matchup. You saw a lot of the games went to OT, I think, 4 of the 5. So it was pretty evenly ranked. Washington is a good team, but they need to retool right now if they want to really make a push. Goaltending was kind of a tricky situation too. Their starter was out at the beginning of the series, and then their backup actually got hurt in game 1. So they had the third goalie in for the first game, and then the first 2 games, excuse me, and then they had their original starter who hadn't played in a while. So there was a lot of mess kind of in Washington's net that didn't really help them. And they're like I said, they're a good offensive team. They have Ovechkin, who's one of the best scorers of all time. He's a Hall of Famer for sure. They got good defensemen. I mean, they're a solid team. They could have made a run if they beat Boston, I think. I think them versus the Islanders would have been a good series, but Boston's really good too. I mean, they've got a lot of speed. They're really good on special teams, good goaltending, good defensemen. I mean, they're a solid team. I'm curious to see what happens between them and the Islanders because they're pretty evenly matched as well.
If you're Washington, how do you feel moving forward? Are you encouraged or because I mean, you're competitive in the playoffs. Like you're close, it feels like, correct?
Yeah. I mean, they won it a few years ago. They're not too far away from that team that won it. It's definitely not a rebuild. It's maybe a retool, maybe sign a few guys, maybe make some moves, and I think they're right back in it. They kind of got a tough draw with Boston because Boston is really good in the playoffs traditionally. As is kind of a theme with Boston sports, whether you like it or not, they just always seem to show up in the postseason. So That was no exception this year. But I think Washington isn't too far. I don't think they should worry too much, make any like big moves, but they definitely got to make some moves if they want to get back in the Stanley Cup hunt.
Yeah, from talking to you, it sounds like Toronto's the team that's not in any. Toronto's the team that got knocked out that has the most where they're like, oh my gosh, we are in just a minefield. It's like an atomic bomb went off, and they got to figure out now how to put things back together because they're just like, we lost the player we traded for, we made all these moves. Now we got to rebuild and figure everything out because we were in a good spot, now we're not. Is that true? Like Toronto's the team that is probably the most panicked right now after getting knocked out.
Yeah, and I think part of that just goes with being in kind of the heart of the NHL. I mean, Toronto is the biggest market, obviously. The fans are super loyal. They haven't won in a while. They got a young GM in Kyle Dubas. It's just like they maybe shouldn't panic as much as they're probably going to. But, I mean, in Toronto, the pressure is always on. So they're definitely going to have to make some moves. They're paying those three players that I mentioned, William Nylander, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, they're all making at least 10, some of them almost $11 million. So one of them is probably going to get moved. It's probably going to be Mitch Marner. So I'm really curious to see what happens with that because I don't know if you win a trade for him. Like if you're Toronto, I don't know if you win that trade. I'm not sure what you get back really because he's a young player with a lot of potential. I think he's going to be really good one day. It's just he's struggled in the playoffs thus far, so I think they're going to move him. So yeah, I mean they're not too far. Like they almost won this series, and I think if they won this series, they could have beaten Winnipeg because they've had their number all year. So it's going to be interesting because in some sense they're really close, but in other senses they're kind of, I don't know. Like it's hard. How do I word this? Like on paper they're really close, but in the actual postseason, they just can't get it done. So I'm not really sure what you can do. They need to shake it up, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah. Do you expect people to get fired?
I'm not sure. Kyle Dubas, I think, is really smart, but he clearly messed it up this year. I mean, I think trading for Nick Foligno was a big mistake. It cost him a ton. I don't think they'll fire him, but his leash is getting shorter and shorter. So if they miss the postseason next year, I think he might be on the hot seat.
Is the Toronto Canadian market? So Toronto as a sports market, a city you're working in, for a fan base, would you compare them to like the New York Yankees, who their baseball fans are huge, or the Philadelphia Eagles, who it's just ravenous, passionate fan base that cares maybe more than a lot of other ones, or the Cowboys in the NFL? Like there are certain fan bases that just care more. Alabama football cares way more than Washington State, where I went to college. Like the fan base cares way more. Therefore, the pressure is way higher. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean Toronto is definitely a pressure cooker for the players. I mean it's not an easy place to play. People are super passionate, and they will turn on the team pretty quickly too. I mean you see that a lot in Toronto traditionally, where the team's playing poorly. The city kind of quits on them, so it's kind of tricky. They still care, but it's kind of like, man, the Leafs just keep letting me down. Screw these guys. I mean, they're still going to be a fan, but, it's like, man, I hate the Leafs, but I love them at the same time. It's kind of like that. So it's not an easy place to play. It's definitely not an easy place to be a GM. So it's going to be really interesting because Leafs fans are already upset. So when they keep watching the playoffs go on, I'm sure they'll get more and more upset because, that should have been us.
Yeah, what comes to mind, I was watching the Yankees the other day got swept by the Detroit Tigers, who are a terrible baseball team. And Yankees fans are like, it's okay to call out our team. Like, that's our job. We need to keep them accountable. I just hear so many similarities there between New York and Montreal. I mean, they're actually pretty close geographically, too. I'm curious, man. First of all, great job. That was a lot of great stuff. Is there I know you got notes in front of you. Is there anything else you're like, you took notes on? You're like, I want to mention this before we go.
Yeah, actually I do. Real quick, I just wanted to give, once again, I kind of did this a lot, but I want to give a lot of credit to the Canadiens. There's a few players that I wanted to mention that I didn't. Their GM has done a phenomenal job. They fired their coach as well. So Ducharme, their new coach, he was an assistant before they had fired their original head coach. He has done a lot of good stuff. He was under a lot of pressure, obviously. Montreal is probably the second biggest market in the NHL. A lot of pressure to win there as well. So he's done a lot of really good stuff. He brought in Corey Perry in the offseason. Excuse me. He put up 4 points in 7 games, and he's on a minimum deal. So that was pretty impressive. He plays on the power play and everything, and he's been a really key piece for them for pretty much nothing. I mean, any team in the NHL would have paid the $700,000 if they knew he was going to play this well. So that looks really smart. They traded for Eric Stahl, who's been phenomenal in the postseason. He put up 4 points as well. He plays with Corey Perry as well. So that was another really smart move. And then Joel Armia, I think, really stood out. All 3 of those guys play together. They all put up 4 points respectively. So together, 12 points on one line. And they're considered like the 4th line for Montreal. So that's pretty remarkable. So, give a lot of credit to Montreal and Ducharme for putting together a great team. I mean, they deserve this win. So congrats to them. And I'm excited to see how they compete against the Jets because they're both pretty good teams that probably weren't expecting to be here, so it's gonna be exciting.
So we talked about round 1. Let's shift now to round 2 of the NHL playoffs. Is there one series or one matchup you go, that's 2 teams I can't wait to watch play each other and how it plays out?
Yeah, I think it's kind of been the playoff series everyone's kind of been waiting for is the matchup in the West right now. Colorado versus Vegas. They played each other in the regular season a lot as it was only they only played in the divisions this year with COVID, so they've seen each other a lot. They're 2 pretty evenly ranked teams. They're both really good. Both Stanley Cup favorites, so this one's going to be really exciting. A lot of star power, a lot of speed on both teams, and it's going to be really fun to watch this one.
Well, I think the question, too, is can anyone challenge Colorado? I mean, the Avalanche have dominated this year, except it seems like this one team. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they've been pretty evenly matched in the regular season. You know, they've both won a few games against each other. But Vegas kind of is in a win-now mode. They've got a lot of older players. They've got an older goaltender who has gotten better this year against all odds. He's 36 years old, playing the best NHL of his career. That's 3-time Stanley Cup champion Marc-Andre Fleury. So he's a game breaker in that. If anyone can stop Colorado, it's him. And they've got a lot of star power up front, a lot of offensive talent, a lot of defensive talent as well. So this is going to be a pretty evenly matched one and could decide who wins the Stanley Cup.
Well, as we know how predictions work, it could be evenly matched, or maybe, maybe the other team, maybe a non-Colorado, maybe Colorado loses in 4 games. Like, who knows? But it sounds like it'll be fun to watch. It's like, can they challenge Colorado, this dominant team, this force in the NHL? And if they do, what's that look like? I mean, I'll be watching. I know you'll be watching. It should be really fun, right?
Yeah, this is definitely the can't-miss series of the playoffs up to this point, and it could be the best playoff series in a while. These 2 teams are really good. There's a lot of pressure on both of them to win right now, so this is one you can't miss. Like I said, you got to tune in for this one and see what happens.
Absolutely, man. Okay, well, I know you got somewhere to be in about 15 minutes. I got a COVID test at 12:30, which is 22 minutes from now. I'm flying out. I got to get a test before I go. But I do want to end by saying this. I want to defend you because we did our first episode ever, and you got some hate, and I was offended free. I was like, oh, you want to mess with my dude? I was like upset. It made me angry. And I realized that, hey, I need to explain to people, hey, you're prepared. You work incredibly hard. You are really easy to work with. But also, like, we'd never had a conversation before, let alone done a podcast together. And I'm like, give us like 3 episodes before you come out with like an anvil and you're like, you guys suck together. Get this guy out of here. I'm like, I know people don't like change. They don't like new people, but I want you to know, and I want the audience to know, no, I got Nathan's back. He's good at this. I like it, and I'm really happy to have you here. And I just want you to know, I got your back, and I think you're doing a great job. I'm happy to have you here. And we'll go through the playoffs. And episode 1 to episode after the Stanley Cup Finals is going to be a very different product, and we'll just keep getting better together. And I wanted to tell you that and tell them that because I just saw those comments, and I was like, don't you dare mess with my guy Nathan Shield.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on. As always, I'm excited to keep talking because the playoffs are just going to get more and more exciting. So,
dude, it's so fun. It is so entertaining. I think hockey is a great product that not many people. The reason why I'm doing this is I think that I can't follow hockey as closely as you can or a lot of other people can, but I love it when I get to see it. It's so great, and it deserves to be talked about because it's just such a phenomenal product. And like Major League Baseball gets in their own way over and over again. I'm like, oh, I love the sport of baseball. I hate the MLB. The NHL has a great sport, a great product, and they do everything they can to make this product succeed and do well. And I just think, and the NHL deserves to be uplifted because I love what they're doing over there. And I'm like, it's such a good product.
Yeah, man. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out the playoffs because they're just going to get better from here. So
absolutely. All right, guys. I think that's all we have with Nathan. Just great job, man. Love you. I love talking to you. And I will see you after round 2, and we'll talk further about the NHL playoffs.
All right, perfect. Looking forward to it.
Later, brother. All right, guys, that's all I have. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I love you. I appreciate you. I know there's a weird cut. There's some. This is a scatterbrained episode. I think I cussed a couple times, which I try to never do. Believe it or not, I wasn't drinking. I was just having like a rough night. But I love you. I appreciate you very, very much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. And bam, we are done.